Rodriguez.
Here.
Rogers. Settles. Sexton.
Here.
Sullard. Thorsland.
Here.
Vanish Theronat.
Here.
Wiggs.
Here.
Wilson.
Here.
Cagle.
Here.
Carter. Cowart. Crane. And here. Esri. Arnie.
Here.
Fava.
Here.
Furtado. Greer. Hanauer Friedman.
Here.
Lokshin.
Here.
Pugh. Locke.
Here. I think we missed Mr. Cagle. Oh, we got you? Okay. I just didn't hear it. Never mind. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Mr. Farney, second by Ms. Lokshin. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The agenda has been approved. We have public input, or this is public comment on the proposed financial year 2026 budget. So this is a little different where we're only speaking to the 2026 budget. I'm letting the two comment slips that I have here be known. First up, I have Cheryl Walker from VAC.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce the fact that the position that I'm advocating for, the administrative assistant, is not a new position. It is a vital role for our office. And as we strive to provide essential services and resources to our veterans, the workload and administrative demands will continue to grow. And me having an assistant will be crucial. My goal is to continue to be able to provide community outreach and to bring more focus to the mission that we have for the VAC, and to bring some structure and order to that. But I'm only one person, and when I'm not there, there's nothing can be done when I'm not there. I was sick on Thursday, and I had emails and texts and all that stuff from the staff here, from veterans who showed up. But those were walk-ins. The people that I had scheduled, I got ill on Wednesday evening, and I rescheduled everything. And so it seemed like it just caused a big stir and bothered everyone in the building. But if I had had an assistant, that person could have been there to talk to those people. Regardless whether you guys give me the assistant or not, I will make it work because I'm Army and we adapt and overcome. But the other community people may be hindered because I'm not there to foster those relationships. Thank you.
Moving on, we have Jason Elliott Benda.
Jason Benda, 1529 Lincolnshire Drive. I am a county employee in the Custodial Services Division of the Facilities Department. I understand that budgetary times are tough for our county. I understand the need to look deeply at what every department does, audit the departments to make sure positions that are employed in the department are actually on the organizational chart. I agree with Committee Vice Chair Farney when he talks about assessing the needed duties of all offices, not just the auditors, has already been looked at. At the last full board meeting, there was an employee of the Corrections Division who spoke heeding caution over the elimination of vacancies, and that's what I want to echo tonight. As I look at the budget book, a couple of things stood out to me. One, in the treasurer. The organizational chart has 6 full-time employees, 3 account clerks. That third account clerk position was something that then Treasurer Johnson came before Policy and Procedures last October to argue for, and that the board approved on October 24th. That position was posted on October 25th of last year. It was not filled until February 3rd. My wife filled it on February 3rd. She was terminated on July 30th during the 26th and final week of her probationary period. Temporary positions were posted on August 4th. That permanent position was posted on August 18th. That's not the action of a department that doesn't really need the position. In fact, if I look at the budget book, I still see the arguments there as if that position had never been approved. This is hard. Filling these vacant positions is hard. And I don't want this committee to look at the fact that that particular position is going to appear on 7 of the 12 end of month reports as vacant and say, oh, well, this isn't really necessary for that department. It's hard to fill positions. My own division, Custodial Services Division of Facilities, our organizational chart says we have 11. .5 full-time employees, full-time equivalent. The text on page 61 of the board book actually, or the budget book actually says 2 leads, which is grade E, 7 custodian/mail services full-time, which is grade D, and 3 part-time at 1.5 FTE custodians, which are grade C. The organizational chart actually is 2, 8, and 3. Right now, our staffing levels are 2, 7, and 1. Yes, there's a posting yet again. Same posting I've talked about before. This is now the 5th time we will try to fill that position in the last year. And as I look at that posting, it's one of the things it says is that custodian is expected to clean and maintain approximately 20,000 square feet. In our performance indicators in the budget book, it lists that for 2024, our total square foot cleaned on a daily basis is 307,000 square feet. If one custodian is expected full-time equivalent to clean 20,000, we would need 15 custodians, and that's at last year's total building area. That same performance indicator says for 2025, we have 407,000 square feet due to the addition of this building and the former Humane Society. And we have 11.5 if we are fully staffed according to our budget. As we have fewer staff, that leaves more work for the staff members who are still here, which does 2 things. One, it means the more work we have, the less work we can do well. And also, it makes it harder to retain our staff, as you know, we can see by the turnover in that one position. At the last policy and procedure meeting, there were some issues that members of the committee raised about the current vacancy at the top of my department. So I don't expect any recommendations to come out of this committee that we eliminate the position of facilities director just because it's vacant. But I do want to emphasize how much we need that position. And with all due respect to Michelle Jett, she is one person currently trying to fill 2 high-level full-time positions. One human being cannot do that. We need that position. I need a department head. I understand the problems. I understand when Member Furtado says that county residents get the government that they pay for. I totally understand why she says that, and it makes a lot of sense. But I do think that we need to look very hard, and we need to take great care as we look at vacant positions and consider eliminating them, because we need to make sure that we have adequate and appropriate staffing to provide adequate and appropriate service to the people of the city or the county of Champaign, because that's why we're here. Thank you.
I have no further slips for public comment. If anybody else would like, it looks like everyone's an invited guest. All right, moving on. Board member communications. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Have a meaningful Yom Kippur. So Yom Kippur means Day of Atonement. It's the holiest and most solemn day of the Jewish year and is a fast day. It's It's observed on the 10th day of a particular Hebrew month, which I cannot pronounce. But anyways, beginning Wednesday night, October 1st until Thursday night, October 2nd. And has a great meaning to the Jewish people. It's kind of a day of remembrance for their past year and what looking forward to the next year. And then the proper phrase to say when you meet someone is have a meaningful Yom Kippur.
Any other board member communications? Ms. Carter?
As we go through this meeting, I just want board members and community members to keep in mind that the VAC is understaffed. From my understanding, Chris Smith would be second in demand, not Michelle Jett, for the facilities director. He's worked for this county for 12 years. After 4 years, he was promoted into his current position. I think this board really needs to look at the moves that we're making. They're not making any sense. And as chair and vice chair of the committees, John Farney and Miss Ellie, you're not doing your job, because I think that first of all should have been considered before Michelle Jett. And it's like, I can't even understand what's going on here. Nobody does. It's not saving the county any money if we're facing a deficit. Every time I look at Travis, it's like he has this nervous sweat over him. Like, I'm not even getting real-time information. I don't understand what we're doing. I don't understand what direction we're going in. And we need to keep in mind the other employees of this county when we're making moves like giving a $60,000 increase to an employee that does not have half of the knowledge or experience of Mr. Christ. Thank you.
Mr. Seller?
All right, I've got a few items. First, I've mentioned a couple of times this Men Wear Pink campaign. We are 1 week out, or a week and a day, from my event next week on Wednesday. It's just to support the American Cancer Society and breast cancer awareness, research, and patient advocacy. Hosting a celebrity bartending event. It's open to the public from 5 to 7 p.m. It's at Hotel Royers Lloyd's drinking parlor in Urbana across the street. 10% of all bar sales are going to the cause. 100% of all celebrity bartender tips are going to the cause, and there are several silent auction items being put together, including donations from the university's Fighting Illini Athletics, downtown Champaign local businesses like Hamilton Walker's, the Axe Bar, Mad Goat Coffee, Martinelli's, and packages from local healthcare businesses such as a Fall Basket by Brookdale and Urbana. I'll be behind the bar, and I'll be joined by Urbana Mayor Deshaun Williams and CUSF CEO and breast cancer survivor Michelle Gonzalez. I'll be on with Brian Barnhart tomorrow morning and with Mayor Williams talking about the event and the cause. And again, that's next Wednesday, October 8th, 5 to 7 at Hotel Royer. All are welcome, open to the public. Second, I wanted to give an update on Broadband Task Force. The Illinois Broadband Equity and Access and Deployment Program, BEAD program, we have officially, provisionally been awarded the grant we need for Phase 2B of the project. So to kind of remind everybody where we're at with that. Phase 1 was the 110 miles of backbone, kind of in the big ring centered around Champaign-Urbana. Backbone, it goes past 538 homes. Construction is ongoing and will continue to the middle of next year. Phase 2A is an additional 35 miles of backbone north of Mahomet, around Fisher to Rantoul. That will go past an additional 653 homes. Construction will be next year, and they're going to start acquiring the easements next month. And Phase 2B, which is what this grant helps to fund, is 309 miles of fiber branching off from that Phase 1 backbone. Over 1,250 homes in central Champaign County will be touched as heading north from Ogden, wrapping around to Penfield. Construction for that main phase is to be 2027 to 2029 is the estimate. But this is a big grant award, so Volo needed this to continue with the next phase of their construction. Good job to Peter Folk and the team at Volo, along with Kathy Larson, Kate, and our county support as well. And then finally, I wanted to say thanks to Ms. Hanauer Friedman and Mr. Farney for putting together a very nice piece that was published in today's News Gazette. I hope that the information contained therein helps the public understand some of the actions that this board has taken on their behalf to ensure that the county meets its obligations, and hopefully it helps dispel some of the misinformation that's been shared. Thank you.
Further communications? Mr. Thorsland?
I'll sub for Aaron as a former combine purveyor and driver of wagons. It is harvest time. It's actually ramping up, which is why Aaron isn't here. So there's going to be big equipment out on the country roads. There's going to be big equipment going down 150, heading over to the Andersons. They're slow. They're heavy. The combine's hard to see around. Don't be silly. Don't be stupid. These folks are tired because they're generally staying up far longer than they're getting sleep. And we don't need to have yet another one of those newspaper articles where someone augers themselves into the back of a big barge wagon. So please be careful.
Any further? All right, moving on, I will hand this discussion over to Chair Hanauer Friedman.
I get to be in the hot seat tonight. Okay, so I just wanted to start off by sharing a little bit of structure for the meeting tonight. I'm going to start us off by sharing a proposal that would allow us to keep our fiscal year 26 budget flat. In other words, not make any cuts this year, but we will have to talk about significant cuts in the future. And then give us some time to discuss that proposal versus any across the board cuts that anybody wants to discuss. Travis has given everybody a spreadsheet here, and I think he's going to pull it up as well, that does show, as was requested by this board last time, what 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5% cuts would look like for each department in dollar amounts. And then we'll move on to discuss some of the specific, well, all of the specific proposals that we've received and any new ones anybody has to share tonight. To fund any of the budget requests that we've received from departments for fiscal year 26. And you'll see on the back of that page is where Travis has those listed along with copies that we should have all already received, but of the specific requests from departments. And then we'll move on to discuss any specific proposed cuts, and hopefully wrap it up if we have time with talking a little bit about the future as we think to fiscal year 27 and beyond, how we may approach future cuts or future revenue generation, which is always a preferred discussion to have. So let me just start by saying, budget cuts are not fun. Just last week, but this is the reality we're living in. Last week, Governor Pritzker directed all state agencies to cut 4% of their budget this year to prepare for the forecasted recession. So we know that we've seen our own forecasts for our own budget, and that we have a growing deficit that we've kind of put Band-Aids on now for a couple of years, but it's continuing to grow. So we do have a proposal, though, that would allow us to put one more year of Band-Aid on these budgets. Currently, the fiscal year 26 budget is projected to be running a 1.8 million deficit. So this does not include any of the increases for FOP salary negotiations, because those contract negotiations are ongoing. So keep that in mind. And there are a few other things that could change. So that 1.8 figure could obviously continue to change. But as you all know, we have a policy in this county that the general fund balance needs to stay at 16.7%, or ideally above, preferred closer to 25%. And so that fund balance is going to be dropping to around 18.75% for fiscal year 26, and then the projections after that have it continuing to go even further. So without any new revenue, we really don't have many options. But the proposal that I wanted to share tonight is that, and that is I'm sharing on behalf of the leadership of the Finance Committee, is that we keep the fiscal year 26 budget flat by using $2 million in public safety sales tax funding to pay for expenses that can be charged to that to help the general fund out. And those would mainly be CARF transfers. So this would leave the PSST fund with about 2.6 million in unrestricted fund balance. Policy requires at least 1 million, but this would allow us to kind of float at a flat budget for one more year. The main reason that we're proposing this is that we don't want to have to ask department heads to just slash 3% tomorrow. That's what Pritzker's doing, but if we can, we'd like to have a thoughtful process on that. We'd like to have the time needed to work with all of you department heads. Thank you for being here. And, figure out what makes the most sense for each department. I know that departments are not a one size fits all, that there are very different budgets. Some have absolutely no room to cut, and some might have a little bit of padding. So proposing that we take the needed time to do that. That being said, we don't want to add to the fiscal year 26 budget, right? That deficit is only going to grow if we do that. So I'm going to pause here and let people weigh in. Any discussion on that proposal versus taking an approach of just saying, department heads, we need you to cut 2% for fiscal year 26, for example, and you have that spreadsheet in front of you as well. Yeah, Ms. Rogers.
I just have a question. So you just said by the end of, I just want to make sure I understand. So if we keep everything the same, we'll have a $1.8 million deficit, and we will, okay. And we will drop to 18.75 by the end of 2026, right?
Yeah. Travis, do you want to clarify?
In our packet, it says by the end of 2026, it'll be 16.53. So can you tell me where that came from?
Yeah, so the number that Ellie quoted, I think, was from my presentation a few weeks ago, but the 16.94% is up to the date as of noon today. So numbers still change slightly here and there. So this calculation is as of today. The number Ellie quoted was several weeks ago. Yes.
Jamal, 16 point what?
16.94.
Jamal, it's in the handout that's in front of you on the back of the front page.
Yeah, Ms. Fortunato.
Is that the 16.94? Is that if we move the 2 million?
No, that's currently. If we move the 2 million, you don't have a printout here, but if you look at the board or the sheet, if we move I didn't do 2 million. The deficit is 1.77 million. So if we moved exactly that amount currently from public safety sales tax to general fund, the fund balance ratio would then go up to 20.99, and that would be with a flat zero budget for 26 in the general fund.
Mr. Farney.
And Travis, just so everybody's clear on it, that 20.99% does not reflect any of those new positions that are listed on your sheet there, correct?
Correct.
So if we added any of those, that deficit would grow.
Correct.
Ms. Carter.
Can you tell me why there's nothing pertaining to the executive's office? It seems like the executive office is steady growing, and we're asking the other department heads to cut their budget. Could you make that make sense for me, please?
They did not request any new positions here. That's why they're not listed.
But they're still in the overall budget. Isn't the executive office included?
Of course, everything is in every department has the budget. Yes.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Ms. Locke, Chair Locke.
I think you're not getting the feedback that you were seeking to move this along, so I will give that. I support not making across the board 3% cuts this year. I support giving us time to have thoughtful discussions and get a lay of the land for next year rather than a rushed 1 month, here's what we're going to do, cut everything, no planning, and just hoping. I don't like using PSST as a Band-Aid because it's not a pot of gold. It doesn't just magically replenish. But if that gets us a Band-Aid to another year and gives us time as a county to engage in thoughtful discussions with all of our department heads and work out some plan somewhere, somehow to do this for the coming year, next year's budget, I support the plan where we do not cut across the board this year.
Ms. Rodriguez.
Just remember this decision when I have to give you an update on negotiations with the Fraternal Order of Police. That's coming.
Ms. Furtado.
I'll concur with the chair.
Mr. Seller.
I can concur with that plan as well, but I feel like we've kind of kicked this can a couple of times. We have to actually follow through with a tangible plan on having these discussions. So I would like to see if we can come up with some sort of, I know we always have the budget calendar, but can we come up with a calendar for discussing with department heads what this might look like? So there's something to point to and say we're on schedule or we're not for having these conversations.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is definitely needed. Any other discussion or thoughts, Mr. Parney?
Yeah, so I look at this as being, as you said, kicking the can down the road. It's also somewhat of a middle ground. The other thing we need to remember is with public safety sales tax is that we're not taking it down to our minimum balance, but we need to keep more than that minimum balance in there. There have been times in the past, in the not so distant past, where public safety sales tax actually had to be used to cover cash flow issues with the county. So we have to make sure we're leaving funds there if something happens where we need to have cash in order to cover a payroll before property tax gets distributed or something like that. So I do like this approach that we're not using as much as possible, but we're looking at it kind of in a middle of the road type situation. I think that's all I have for right now. Thanks.
Ms. Furtado.
Yeah, to echo, I was on the board when, that was going on, and we were at about like 12.5%, I think, general fund balance. That is not enough money to make payroll because of the timing of the allocation of property taxes. And so we had to pay with that from public safety sales tax. That is the only fund that has that kind of flexibility. So if we deplete that fund too much and we get down to that threshold again, which this trajectory is on, to be clear, what we are talking about is we would get to like June and not be able to make payroll. And I, just looking at the rate of where we're going, we are 2 years away from that, 2 to 3 years away from that. So this is it. I totally agree. Like, we could kick this can one more time in order to work with elected officials, in order to come up with a plan. but I totally concur that there has to be a plan because we cannot continue to kick down this can down the road. It doesn't work.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. How much is the public safety sales tax balance, since we keep talking about it, but I don't see it on here?
There's a giant chart right there that shows it. It's in your packet.
It's on the back side.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Didn't see the heading there. Excuse me.
Any other discussion on whether we kick the can down the road one more year or make cuts now? Yeah. Mr. Thorsley.
Well, this isn't kicking the can. I concur somewhat with this proposal to dip into the PSST. What I haven't heard yet is we invited all these people here to talk about what their departments could do. And I hate this. Well, maybe they want to go home early and talk about this later, and that's fine too. We talk about not filling positions, and we talk about making payroll, maybe not doing vacancies and things. We haven't talked about things that are going to save us money that aren't people. I know that's not nearly as much, but there's been some discussion, I think, about what we're doing with Brookins. We have a piece of property sitting over there, and I think at some point something happens to that piece of property. Is that a net? Is it, a wash in revenue? Will we save money when the jail's gone? If we lease a lot of space in Brookins, do we make any money, or are we still taking care of it as landlords? If we're going to go with this proposal, I'd want not just, can you handle a 3%? Can you handle a 1%? How many positions can you not fill? But I also want to hear about, we talked about revenue. This isn't really revenue. This is kind of like, I stopped going to 7 Brew every morning, and then I saved that money. Not advertising for them because I don't drink coffee anymore, and I don't understand why I have to wait in my car to get it when you can make it in your office, or you can make it on your kitchen counter. Anyway, things like that. I mean, really, sorry. But, maybe you're super busy or something. Well, that's good. If you like espresso, I like Earl Grey tea. But I'm not going to wait in my car or motorcycle to buy it. Things like that I want to hear about too. Maybe not tonight, because I don't think people are prepared for that tonight. But that definitely needs to be part of pre-budget schedule discussion, like Matt says. We need to have a firm discussion plan. We kind of blew off all of these, tentative study session dates that we had this year. Maybe we need to think more about it. We used them a lot during the ARPA time because we had to work on things for ARPA. We need to think about this as a thing we really have to work on in the next year, in the next 6 months, so that we can put this Band-Aid on and then really talk about dealing with the wound.
Yeah, I agree that that needs to be discussed. But if anybody does have specific proposals for things to cut, we will definitely talk about that tonight as well. Ms. Vanish-Theoret.
Thank you. I'm wondering what that percentage drop is going to do to our loan position. Are we going to be paying more? Are we going to drop in grade? Are we going to, how much is borrowing this money and reducing that baseline going to cost us?
So currently, it will not affect any of the already outstanding debt. Those are fixed prices. We're not expected to go out for any refunding for probably 8 to 10 years. So it would only have an effect if we did any new bonding. It's hard to say without the rating agency actually doing their analysis, but I do know our financial advisors said that they look for about 25% to keep the grade we're currently at. We're very high grade, so we're the second to highest grade, and it's pretty much not going to ever get to the highest grade. So
So is there a danger of us losing that level, or is that not going to factor into anything?
It's possible to go down, but I mean, it will stay the same until we have a ratings agency relook at it, and that usually happens when you go out for new debt. So if we don't do that, it'll probably stay the same for a while.
Chair Locke.
Just to speak to that, I can only imagine one project for which we'd want to go out for debt, and that would be any sort of expansion at the courthouse. But given our financial state, I don't think that's this year or next year or the year after, unless we absolutely have to.
Mr. Pugh and then Ms. Furtado.
I'm sorry again. So what is our current balance of the PSST right now? Is it the 8.8 number or the 6.9 number?
The end of year 24 is
I mean, like right now, how much do we have in that fund?
Because we're in the middle of the year, I don't have, because expenses and revenue come in at different times, so it's not.
Let's say in the future, it's a rough number, if it's possible.
I mean, I would project at the end of 25 about a $7.6 million deficit or fund, but 3 million of that is restricted, so that can't be spent. So 4.6 roughly of unrestricted.
Okay, not the answer, but it's cool. Thanks.
Ms. Furtado.
I mean, I do think beyond the courthouse, the other thing that it makes it much less likely that we would refund the debt. Like it's much less likely that when those two bonds become eligible for refunding, which usually you do in order to decrease the percentage that you're paying, and the margins on that are usually pretty tight to begin with. If it's worthwhile or not, and we have a fiscal policy that sort of triggers whether we should rather do that or not, it's much less likely that we will do that, because if we do think doing that is going to degrade our bond rating because we're going to be graded again, some of that savings would disappear. And given the fact that the Fed is moving on financial interest rates, I mean, it's a ways out. It's, I think we're like 8 years away or 6 years, at least 8 years away from one of them. It's like a 15 and a 10 between the two. I think 10 on the jail and 15 on the general one. So that's not a this board's problem, but it is a problem that future boards will probably look at us sideways on, because it means that they probably won't be taking that sort of administrative action that could long-term save us money on the back end of some of the two big projects that we have going on. There's consequences to these kind of decisions.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. I'm agreeing with Mr. Sollard in his comment, and also Ms. Carter in hers. I don't see we're in the middle of the road position if we do nothing, and it seems like, are we doing nothing? We're just going to wait till we get to this spot next year and then decide that we should have done something? I thought we knew this was happening a couple months ago. It's not like it's happening within the next 30 days. I thought we knew this like 3 or 4 months ago, that we were going to have some challenges. I don't understand why there wasn't maybe some more thought. That's how I feel, that, okay, we're going to kick the can down the road and then come up with a plan for a plan maybe. But I think the way I understand Mr. Soller's comment, how do we get this plan going? Because it feels like we're just kicking the can down the road. And then as far as vacant positions, did we address the long-standing unfilled vacant positions and how many there are, and are we really truly going to fill them? And why would we budget something that's a long-standing vacant position and just go back to the zero-base approach and go back to justify whether that position needs to be filled or not? And then I also, Ms. Carter's comment, I thought, not knowing all the details of personalities or capabilities, it would seem normal to take someone that was second in command and make them the director or the commander and then post for the vacant position. That just seems reasonable to me. So those are my comments. And then one other question I didn't know, I couldn't understand, maybe I'm missing here. Is there a fear of not meeting payroll this year, next year, 2 years down the road? What was that? I missed that part. If Ms. Furtado can.
Not this year. No.
Next year.
I mean, it's hard to say because, I mean, part of this has to do with like rates of return on, or sales tax rates of return on, lots of different things. But if we continue down this trend, I mean, we're looking at 27, 20, probably 27, 28, maybe 28, where that would become a real concern. So no, but not next year, because if it was next year, I wouldn't be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. So then maybe one more comment then. So why wouldn't we go back to look at some of these long-standing vacant positions and just, if the county survived this many years or a year more without them being fulfilled, why should we keep them on the books in that department? Why wouldn't we just put that in the general fund? And then when that position actually needs to be fulfilled at that time, then we could consider moving back money from the general fund back to that department. Is there something wrong with that?
Can I weigh in here?
Yeah.
So I think that goes to some of the larger issues that we need to take up for fiscal year 27 when we start looking at the details and thinking about how we budget overall. I know zero-based budgeting has been thrown out there a lot over the last year or so as, one suggestion that the county should be using. We need to look at how we're budgeting for positions in departments, and there's so many ways. There are a lot of changes, right, that we could be making. We're not going to be able to discuss the details of those changes tonight, but I agree. I think along the lines with what Mr. Sullard was proposing, we do need to sit down and start now on thinking through and working out what changes, significant changes we're going to need to make starting in fiscal year 27. And I, as finance chair, I take responsibility for not doing that this year. But it hasn't happened. We're here, and I think, yes, we absolutely need to work on that moving forward, because there are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of different types of budgets and departments, and it's going to take more than one meeting to hash it all out. Locke, Sullard, Furtado.
I want to add that to that end, there's a lot of the budget that we don't see, a lot of the process that we don't see. It starts in April. And so all of these department heads sitting behind us all, they put in a lot of work in building the budget that we're looking at right now. And then for them to get 1 month's notice from us that, hey, or less than 1 month's notice from us that, hey, we want to cut 3%, go. It's irresponsible for county functions, in my opinion. Whereas if we can come to some solution right now and then have meaningful conversations at our study sessions in November and January and February, so that we go into the April budget session or the April budget meetings that they have with some clarity going in that this is not going to be the lay of the land is not going to be what it has been before. It's going to be a brave new world, but we'll all have some understanding of it. Doing it right now could lead to some sort of chaos where we cut too much and we end up hiring people back, or where we think we're okay and we still have to cut more, and just a better plan where everybody's engaged in it and not just in a panicked 2 weeks, I think is a much better solution.
Yeah, just to kind of clarify where I was coming from with the comments as well, I would think that finance department and finance committee would work with the department heads to come up with the sort of schedule I'm referring to in terms of when everyone's available to meet for that. And as far as why not earlier in the year? Why now? Sort of discussion. I think that's what was just being explained. Is a year from now, during the budget discussions, there was a different issue on the table about more revenue. The landscape for the department heads to try to put together a budget or a proposal is very different than now, where the landscape that we're telling them is we're looking at cuts. What does that look like? A year ago, we were saying we're looking at maybe more revenue. So it's a different conversation. It can't be done in a month. Like, we just decided to have these budget cut proposals last month. It's not realistic to expect good, thorough, thought out, detailed proposals like that in a month. But kicking the can, I hate to keep using the phrase, but doing that for the next year and knowing that that's the background we're starting with can lead to more thoughtful proposals from all the department heads.
And we just received a piece of paper, which I believe, Travis, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the list of long-term vacancies that actually are on the general fund.
That is correct, but
Right.
Michelle would be able to answer questions a little bit better.
So as you could see, just because there's a list of vacancies, so these are, to Mr. Wilson's point, what kind of money are we looking at in terms of long-term vacancies? It's, $364,870. Now, that said, even if we did decide right now, we're just going to take all these positions, that doesn't solve the problem. It just slows it down. And secondly, I think our employee from facilities spoke very eloquently about how you have to think about each of these positions on a case-by-case basis. And one of the positions that is on here is the Veterans Assistance Commission Administrative Assistant, which is something that we're considering giving a raise to. And I thought we heard very eloquently about what the consequences of cutting that position would be to that office, right? So if we, and next year, if we got this list, the 7 positions on it might be very different. I'm sure that, planning and zoning and the sheriff's office and the state's attorney and IT would all also be very glad to come up and tell us about the implications if we just cut these positions. And so I don't think just thinking about that's some sort of blanket solution in order to, maybe there is a position or two that has been vacant for a long time that in a considered way, we could be like, look, this could help us on the margins, but A, is not going to solve the budget crisis that we're in. And B, I think without actually talking to each of these elected officials or department heads about the implication, we heard from the sheriff's office asking us for more court security officers. He has a vacant position for a court security officer. My guess is he would say cutting a position would be moving him in the wrong direction from where he thinks he needs to be administratively. And so I do think that that's an important and should be a very measured, this is something that you would do with a scalpel, not a hatchet.
Mr. Pugh, then Ms. Carter.
Yes, talking about these jobs here, can we find out when the last time these jobs were posted? Because they just weren't, or what? Because if you need a VAC, administrative assistant, I'll put the word, I'll get 2 vets to apply by the end of the week. That's what I'm saying right now. I mean, were these not posted, or? That's what I'm asking. This is like way back in June, we couldn't find an administrative assistant?
I don't think anyone on the board can necessarily speak to, Mr. Farney.
And Mr. Hall is here and he can correct me, but I remember just at last month's ELUC meeting, we had 2 planner positions vacant. They finally were able to hire someone. The planner position, the systems administrator, and IT, those are highly specific.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And like the IT position, I know it's still posted because a friend of mine applied for it last month. So I do believe that these are posted.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I believe all positions, vacant positions, are posted on the website. So, Ms. Carter, and then
I
Chair
don't think
Locke.
that's the case, but okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Chair Locke was going
Ms. Carter,
speak to.
If it's okay,
Mr.
Ms. Carter,
Pugh's
I have an
point.
answer, sort of, for what Brett was asking. Okay. So Mr. Pugh, you may recall there was a time when we had no VAC employees. The current person had left, and then the assistant left as well. And I think they just never, when we hired our new VAC person, we did not. It wasn't budgeted for, and so the position exists, but it hadn't been budgeted for. And in this budget that we have in front of us, that assistant position is currently not budgeted for, but that is a request that's pending, and it's on the handout that was provided to us. If you see on the same one where we were looking at PSST, beside that, the bottom says VAC admin assistant. So I think that is part of it as well.
I thought that was just the raise.
You know what? You might be right. But I don't think it was in the budget either this year.
Yeah, Travis, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, two things. First of all, the two line items here, the VAC supervisor is the raise. The VAC admin assistant is the request for a part-time admin assistant. And then to go back to what Jen said, the admin assistant is a position that is on the county books, but it was not budgeted. VAC did not budget that last year, and it is not currently in their budget this year. It has to be requested, approved by this board as a budget request to add it.
So we're halving the VAC administrative's hours maybe, from what's on this sheet to what's on this sheet, because we're going from $34,000 to $18,000. So we're cutting the hours for them.
The budget request was for a half-time admin assistant. Yes.
Chair Locke.
I feel like we've been told this, but maybe it was in other conversations. But Mr. Wilson, as the VAC liaison from the board, could probably speak to this with more accuracy than I'm about to. But I believe that the VAC board just recently voted for this. It was not part of the budget request presented to us, but the VAC board voted to authorize a part-time assistant without putting it through our budget proposal. So that's where this confusion is coming from. So this request is outside of the request that we received, but it has been voted on and authorized by the VAC board. Is that accurate, Mr. Wilson?
Probably close enough. But yeah, the VAC board did two things, and those are published in their meeting minutes. You can go to their website and look at it if you care to. So they agreed to increase the salary of the superintendent by $6 an hour and to reapprove an admin assistant. And you're probably all going to be offended by this. Frankly, the VAC doesn't need your approval. And by law, you know that. Right? That's the truth. So whatever we decide tonight, so my last conversation with the president of the VAC board, I still want to show the two positions as FTEs on the org chart, assuming that next year there may be some more money for a VAC assistant. However, the $6 an hour raise for the VAC superintendent is paramount. So I recommend that you approve that or add it to your budget.
So can we just sort of table this discussion until we get to these positions? Because we're definitely going to be discussing the two VAC positions, and we're getting kind of into the weeds on this one here. I want to make sure that we wrap up the larger question of, are we going to put this Band-Aid on for fiscal year 26, or does anyone want to support across the board cuts? And I know, Ms. Carter, you are next.
Yeah. So when you include the cuts, can you also include the revenues that the county is bringing in? I want to echo what Eric said. We hearing about all the cuts that need to be made, but we're not hearing about what the county will save when the inmates are back. We're not hearing about what the potential revenue that Brookings would bring in. So is there any way you can get those numbers to us?
Ms. Carter, the revenue is in the chart that we received, the projected revenue for 25.
Revenues 50,000.
Mr. Cagle.
I think I'm going to echo what Ms. Carter's asking for and ask for the next thing that we see. And it sounds like kind of the direction that we're going with the lines is department by department showing the income and expenses so that we can see the revenue and expenses broken out by each of the places that are occurring it.
That's what we have in the binder.
The larger one, right?
Right.
No, but
so
I think
detailed by department.
The piece I think Ms. Carter is referring to is probably with the Brookings building. We don't have that projection in there. There is nothing that has been discussed as far as I'm aware about income or revenue projections for that or rent projections and expenses for that. So I think that probably would be along the lines of something we were looking for.
Yes, so we will definitely be having a discussion about that. I believe that on October, I forget if it's the cow or the full board, but we will be coming back to that whole Brookings discussion at that time. So absolutely, we will discuss that. Chair Locke.
At this time, any Brookings revenue would be speculative because the indoor climate research that wants to take over several thousand square feet of Brookings. After hearing our board meeting, there's not a signed lease yet because they're very nervous that we're going to say, no, too bad. So that is still a work in progress. So any revenue would be speculative. At this point, you know, there are some agencies that rent there. RPC is there. If ICERT stays, RPCs, or if ICERT signs, RPC's lease extends, we would have numbers. At this point, all of those numbers would be speculative.
Mr. Woods. Wiggs, sorry.
I'll answer to anything. I've been called worse. Going back to our broader plan, I guess I'm just curious if we are talking about dipping into the public safety sales tax. From what I'm reading on this chart here is the projected revenue for that total about $100,000, a little less. Is that a normal amount of increase to that fund yearly? How long will it take to I guess replenish what we have used?
Sorry, yeah, Travis, please.
Okay. For the tax itself, we average about $7 million roughly per year, and that increases, I'd say about 2% as an estimate per year, roughly. The thing that fluctuates is the interest and investment income. So those are really the only two revenue sources in that fund. And that question's a little difficult because we're in the middle of big projects right now on public safety sales tax, the replacement of the courthouse system. So we had been building up a fund balance for this purpose, and for 25 and 26, we're spending down some of that fund balance to cover that. Once those expenses are finalized, we will start, assuming we don't have any other new expenses coming in, start gradually building up a fund balance again, knock on wood. But that's all dependent on if new projects come up, if we start paying for eligible expenses that are typically paid out of the general fund from the public safety sales tax. This would also be the second straight year that we've paid $2 million additional to Band-Aid the general fund. So if we don't do that in the future, that would help increase the fund balance quicker.
Okay, so I guess for those who are new, I just want to reiterate, we're not actually voting on anything tonight, but we are giving thumbs up or general direction to Travis, essentially, as to any changes that we might want to see in the budget that will come back before us for the vote later this fall. Ms. Carter.
I want to echo Mr. Wilson. The VAC, like we had in the past seen that it's been understaffed, those should be 2 full-time positions. It shouldn't even be a part-time position. If we're constantly adding to the executive's office and our departments are not adequately filled,
Ms.
that's
Carter,
just
Ms. Carter,
irresponsible.
we're going to come back and talk about those positions in a little bit. So
Okay.
if you could just hold on. Okay. Why don't we do, unless there's anyone who hasn't spoken, who has Bernie or Mr. Cale.
One quick question, just for the you mentioned the courthouse system was going to dip into public safety sales tax. What was the budget amount for that? Do you have that off the top of your head? I was looking for it and I couldn't find it quickly.
I think in 25, we budgeted, it was around $2 million. I don't remember the exact number, but we moved, because it wasn't all going to be spent in 25, it got rolled, I think 1.5 million got rolled over to 26. Those might not be exact, but they're close enough.
Okay. Can we, I guess, do a thumbs up on moving forward with this proposal, the Band-Aid of $2 million from public safety sales tax to the general fund to allow us to avoid across-the-board cuts for fiscal year 26? Mr. Sillard.
Just to clarify, is it just going to be a flat 2 million, or are we talking about a specific amount that it will be, a little bit? Okay.
So it's that 1.774 million that Travis has on the second slide.
Travis, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, just to clarify, instead of making it a flat number, is it okay if we just say to get the surplus deficit to 0?
Yes. Okay, I think you got the thumbs up for that. Okay, so with that as a backdrop, then let's move on to discuss the proposals that we received for specific budget requests from our departments for fiscal year 26. These are all listed by the spreadsheet that I think is still up there. Yes. Along with the specific requests. Now, we're going to go through these one by one. I have received proposals for most of these, but not all of these. So if, we'll go through the ones that we already have detailed proposals for, and then if anybody has additional proposals that they want to put forth tonight, you will have the opportunity to do that as well. So I'm going to start with the first proposal, which we received thanks to Ms. Furtado at the last budget discussion, and that is for the Chief Deputy Collector. And let me just preface that the proposals that we're about to go through all keep the budgets flat. We're not adding any funds, not increasing the deficit. So for the Treasurer's Chief Deputy Collector, we do have a very specific proposal. The Treasurer's Office, and I'm just gonna share this proposal here. The Treasurer's Office would be kicking in $6,520 to this position, and the rest would come from the county board's budget. Specifically, we would be taking $63,039 from admin, and then we'd be taking $15,000 from professional services, $3,000 from advertising legal notices, $1,000 from conferences and trainings, and $3,797 from dues, licenses, and membership. Any discussion or questions on this? And I think, is our treasurer here if we have any questions for him? Yes, there he is. Hi. Selection.
Okay, this is a tiny question about one of the things that you just said that might not be specific to this position, but in looking at the conferences and training and travel for the board, that's $11,000 that we frequently don't use. So why can't that just be absorbed fully into positions? Is there anybody who plans to go to a conference? Like, I mean, I'm going to advocate that we don't.
I'm not sure. I'm going to ask. I can't.
Well, you
had through the mic and see
sorry.
behind me, but I think that some of the county board budget funds staff and other people in the county. Like I know we have a line for staff recognition that's under the county board budget.
Oh, no,
so,
I'm talking specifically about the travel and conferences.
right. Yeah, I'm not
11.
sure, so I'm going to ask
And
Michelle.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds to look it up because I'm concerned we might be messing around with per diem as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. And it's nice that some of these things have been worked out beforehand, but can we get copies of that? Because I'm flipping over and I'm not seeing where the money's coming from. And, you just said it really fast, which is nice, but
So if you look in the county board budget in the binder,
I mean,
it's near the very end.
Can we have it tagged here to these actual jobs, Was that too much to ask though? To, hey, we got this one. We're gonna find the money for this one from these certain things. It can be part of that sheet.
Travis prepared those sheets, so I'm just sharing the proposal that I have here. I'm happy to share it with you by email if you'd like. Yeah.
I'm happy to add it. We're just getting these proposals tonight, so okay. Some of them I don't even know what they are. It's the board's proposals, so we could add them afterwards.
It'd be nice to look at, yeah. Thank you.
We don't have a whiteboard or a chalkboard in this room, so I'm sorry.
Could Travis maybe, if you talk slower, then Travis could type it on the spreadsheet so that we could see it? Because I was also trying to write it down, and
I can repeat it slowly so you can all write it down. Okay, so we are talking about the treasurer's chief deputy collector position, which is $92,356, and you should all have that number in front of you with the position request. The treasurer has offered to kick in $6,520 from his existing budget. So to cover the remaining $85,836, we're proposing that we pull $63,039 from the unused administrator salary. And then from the county board professional services line, $15,000. From the advertising and legal notices line, $3,000. From the conferences and training line, $1,000. And from the dues, licenses, and membership line, $3,797. And most of these are on page 69. It's the very back of the binder, County Board General Fund 1080-0110, under services.
69 of section 3.
Yeah. Ms. Portato, did you want to speak to this one at all?
No, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. I think having that office continue to function at the high level that it's functioning at is, should be the deep concern of the board. We have that money in that administrative line that was kept there for the board to be able to direct money to things that we thought were pressing. In the past, the board has made the decision to use that money to pay for the people that saw the transition from the nursing home. More recently, we have used that money to pay for the people that oversaw the installation of the new Munis system. In fact, there's a little bit of that continuing on. And then most recently, we used some of that money in order to help pay for the grant coordinator position. So to be fully transparent, my suggestion regarded just the money from the treasurer's office, and then that $63,039 from our allocation. The rest of this, I believe Ellie worked with, and the finance group worked with Travis to identify, and I fully support it. Yeah, I didn't come up with the benefits, to be perfectly honest, but I think that this is a good plan. I can't think of a higher priority that the board would have than to make sure that our financial ship is in order. And a lot of us had been through when the treasurer's office wasn't. The reason that it's functioning well right now is because this team is together. And I don't understand why we would try not to break up that team. And that's, I guess, the end of that.
Ms. Van Strana.
Yeah, so this covers the salary. Are we just ignoring the benefits portion of this? Or
No, it covers all of it.
Covers everything. Okay.
Yeah, Stephanie came up with the salary, and then Travis and I came up with the benefits.
Okay, that's where. Okay, I knew there was something going on, but I couldn't quite catch.
Mr. Sellard, and then Ms. Rogers.
Then this would be a recurring plan to have all the money permanently reallocated this way to continue paying for this position?
Yes. Ms. Rogers.
That was my question.
Ms. Furtado.
Recurring until which time we come up with a broad, I do think if we get to the point where we have the financial information to do zero-based budgeting, I think that having conversations about finance in general would be part of that, and we might be looking at restructuring things like that. In order to do zero-based budgeting, you have to have good numbers, and until we get the auditor side of the shop in order, that's going to be very, very difficult to do. And so I don't know that would be possible for 2026. And I also don't know, I think we would have to do department by department. And I think honestly, and this is something, we've talked about for years since I've been on here, one of the most logical places I think to start zero-based budgeting would be the clerk's office, because their operation shifts so much from election to election. And so I think building a budget based off of what the clerk actually needs for that year would make the most sense because of the actual, but it's a lot of work to do zero-based budgeting. It's not like you can just, it's something Dr. Storr asked for repeatedly while he was on this board, but it's not something we could do. It was not something we could do before the Munis upgrade. That would have just, the amount of work it would have taken has been forever. We're almost done with that. Once we're done with that, we have our financial ship in order. So I don't know that I necessarily think this has to be it forever, but yeah, for the next few years, I think that this is where that money should come from.
Mr. Kale.
Is that sort of the implied direction that we're going with kind of what Mr. Sellard asked for when we start to bring in the different departments next year? Is that something that we can start to approach, that we don't necessarily have to do zero-based budgeting as a direct ask, but start at least building up to that?
Yes, and I hope that we'll discuss this a little bit more at the end of this meeting. Any other discussion on this particular proposal? Mr. Vava.
I do like this proposal a lot. I just got a question. Maybe some of these numbers from the binder are out of date now, because you mentioned 63K from the admin salary. Looks like in our binder it's just at 58.
Ms. Furtado, do you want to?
So the amount of money there in that is $130,000. We had only told Travis and admin what we wanted to do for $58,000 of it, which was the what we're paying for the grant coordinator. We had not given any direction on where the heck we wanted that money. So it's not listed. Do you see what I'm saying? But that's the amount, is that amount has always been $130,000. So that's where that difference is. Some years we've put it towards contractual services, and some years we've put it towards salary based on the kind of people we wanted to pay. And so basically he's just been waiting around for us to tell him what the heck we wanted to do with our money. That's why it's not in there. But that's, I triple checked it like 15 times that's what the difference was.
I had the same question. It was very confusing.
Could you say that number again, Ms. Furtado?
What is it? 6339 is what's the difference?
Yes, is that the number you're asking for?
Yeah, $63,039 is the difference.
The total was 130,000. So, okay, why don't we take a thumbs up for this proposal? Sorry, Mr. Pugh.
Can we do that after we have looked at all of these first and then go back and decide? Because I'm worried about we start saying yes to a few things and we run out of money, and we start saying no to things as the night goes on.
Well, the proposals are not connected and they all leave us with a flat budget. So I'm going to say let's go ahead and go proposal by proposal. Thumbs up for treasurer. Okay. The next one we have is the PRIA coordinator.
Hey, Ellie, just so we have that on record, thumbs up on that?
Yes.
There was one thumb down, though.
I think it's just a majority type of thing. Yes. Again, these are not official votes. Ms. Lockton, yes.
Could I just ask you to reiterate, to be clear on process, when we're thumbsing up, we're just saying we want to see this written into the budget that we're then going to be voting on?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a proposal for the PRIA coordinator position, which the salary is fully reimbursed by AOIC. So it was just the benefits, which Shannon estimates is somewhere between 23 and 26,000 that we need to fund. And in working with Shannon, we were able to find this funding within her existing budget by moving that same amount from full-time salary to the fringe line. And I know that several board members spoke in support of this position last time we met. So just wanted to put that proposal out there, and Shannon's here if anyone has any questions for her. Ms. Lockton.
So if you found this already in your budget, I don't see the need for. Yes, fantastic. Love to hear it.
Okay, can we move to thumbs up for this one? Oh, Mr. Farney.
I'm very uncomfortable with us doing thumbs up and thumbs down. I think we should just, as we talk, I think our executive's office and the budget director is going to understand what we're saying. But we really should not be doing thumbs up, thumbs down on this.
Okay. Unless there's some clear disagreement, I guess. Okay. So I think we've got an okay on the PRIA coordinator. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. So everything in column E and F then is being added to the budget?
We are discussing ways to fund these items without increasing the budget.
Okay.
Okay, the next one on the list is a one-time expense, and that is the explosives canine that the sheriff requested. And we did receive a proposal, since this is a one-time expense, to fund that $25,000 out of public safety sales tax. Any discussion? Mr. Sullard.
Just want to be sure we're talking about an explosives canine as in one that can sniff out, not an explosive canine.
Yes. Any other discussion, Mr. Thorsland?
I like dogs, but I'm trying to. I mean, it's a one-time expense, yes, but then it will be a continuing expense, even though it's not really a continuing expense. It's been a while since we've had a bomb in Champaign County. I'm not hoping that that's a bad thing to say out loud in a public meeting, and I know I like dogs, but I don't know that this is something we need to do in a year where we're trying to, save every little dollar. So if Dustin wants to explain briefly, if we think we have a need for this, a pressing need, then I'm all for it.
Well, he comes up, I would just add that any recurring costs associated with the dog would need to be taken on by the sheriff's budget.
Yeah, I understand, but the sheriff has a lot of budgetary needs. A lot.
Yeah, Sheriff.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So we had for several years a canine explosives, or an explosives canine, not an explosive canine. And that started right after the Molotov cocktail was brought and thrown at a judge in the courthouse. And our canine was retired 2 years ago now, I believe, whenever the handler went to U of I because he got paid more there. And so since then, we have not had an explosives canine. I know that canine did alert several times to firearms and things like that were attempting to be brought into the courthouse. Whether this is funded or not is completely up to you. But with everything going on in society right now, I think that I'm really glad we haven't had anything in the courthouse. I really am. I think it is asinine to not take proactive stances to protect the courthouse. And now that Bennett is here, the availability to do that now, full transparency, the U of I does have bomb dogs as well. But we never know if they're going to be on. The advantage for us having one is that every morning they sweep the grounds. And so if there is something that's proactively going to get it, there is still security at the front door of the courthouse, provided I have all 13 court security officers that will scan packages and different things like that. That wouldn't necessarily get a vehicle out in the parking lot or something like that. So my personal opinion is it's very much worth the cost, especially if something happens or it prevents something from happening. But that's up to excuse me. But that's up to you to decide.
Ms. Carter.
Hi. How many dogs do we have currently working with the county?
So currently we have, well, technically until tomorrow, we have 3 narcotics canines. We'll retire one tomorrow whenever I make a promotion. And we have no explosives canines.
So do you think it would be cheaper if we get one of the narcotics canines trained, or is that not possible? They can't be trained for multiple?
No, it's very, generally they're not trained for both of them. And it's really difficult once they are trained to be able to retrain them for something else. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Varney.
Yeah, I support this. This is exactly why we have a public safety sales tax. And so it's very much an appropriate one-time expense to purchase this tool that we need.
Ms. Lakshan.
So with one dog being retired tomorrow, do you anticipate being able to absorb some of the recurring costs with what you will recover from that dog's use?
So I am planning on adding a canine after the first of the year by using specialty funds.
Okay.
And there is no, I am able to do that with some canines moving forward for narcotics canines moving forward. Okay. But I'm not able to do that in any kind of specialty fund for an explosives dog, okay. Or else I'd absolutely be doing that too. You know, the county board for a couple of years has been asking us to take anything from specialty use funds that we can. And so we've really been looking at that, but there's just nothing quite yet that would take care of that explosives dog.
No, I appreciate the explanation. Just wasn't sure if you were going to replace or got it.
Mr. Sellard.
Yeah, just to be clear for Travis, I also want to support this. I agree that in today's climate, it's There's plenty going on, and we don't want it to happen here. So I'm going to vote for this.
And I will just add, this was not originally my proposal, but I do support it. I agree. Unfortunately, there's a lot of political violence out there right now, and this is relatively inexpensive. So I also like dogs. Any further discussion on this? Mr. Fava?
Just a clarifying question about using the public safety sales tax fund for this. Is this something that we can use the restricted fund balance for, or is this coming out of the unrestricted?
Unrestricted.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Furtado?
Just a point of clarification, the restricted fund balance is the amount that we have to have in order to back the bonded out construction of the jail for the, so that is a legal requirement. You have to have so much money in the bank to back the loan, essentially. And that won't change until we pay that off in 15 years from whenever we built it.
So we never touched that. Mr. Pugh?
Thank you. Just for the taxpayers, how many years do you think you might get out of the dog?
Realistically, I would hope 8 to 9. That's generally what we see with. So I came in when we had our explosives canine, and he was about 8 years old when he retired because it wasn't worth trying to retrain him with another handler and things. Generally, with any canine, we get about 8 years worth of work.
Sherlock?
I view this as an insurance policy. We hope we never need it, but it's 9 years for $25,000 plus food, basically. I support it.
Ms. Carter?
One more question. Will there be a new position within your department that would be, I guess, the overseer of this canine?
No, it would be assigned to one of the 13 that I currently have.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Why don't we move on? If the sheriff would like to remain where he is. The next one on the list is some of the new positions that the sheriff requested. Essentially, the sheriff gave us a proposal for this in his memo from the cow. It was that orange memo, if anyone still has it, explaining how a certain amount of the overtime, and please feel free to step in if I mangle any of this, but if the overtime can basically be redirected to fund some of these positions, because we have to pay the overtime no matter what. And if we have the staff, then the amount of overtime should decrease. And there were requests for several positions under law enforcement and several positions under corrections. By the calculations that were provided in the memo from the sheriff, that broke down to about $110,000 in overtime from law enforcement and about $242,000 in overtime from the corrections side of things. And so those funds could be redirected to actual staff. And then that would leave us with the one-time expenses that are required anytime there's a new position in law enforcement. And those amounts, I believe, were $98,000 for law enforcement and $79,000 for corrections. So I would propose that those, if we want to move forward with this, that those one-time expenses could come out of public safety sales tax, unrestricted, whereas the overtime funds are just moved around. So we're not actually increasing the budget. Do you have anything to add to that?
So I would just add that it's very difficult to quantify, because if you can imagine that if I have 57 deputies, that's probably sufficient. If I had 57 deputies working today or working in general. Unfortunately, like right now I have 5 vacancies. And so where the extra positions help, we probably are not. So if we add 4 deputy positions, for an example, and let's just say I have 60 deputies, I probably am never going to have 60 deputies that we are paying for the full year because I'm never fully staffed. There's always one that leaves or a few that leave. Like for an example, right now, the 5 that I don't have because they've gone on to other positions. The problem with that, though, is from me, is that if we don't budget for the full amount that you authorize me to have, then I'm doing a disservice if we do get fully staffed, which would be great. But that's kind of what we're balancing is how do we keep our minimum staffing that are required by collective bargaining with overtime and things like that, with also making sure we have enough staff to keep that buffer for when employees leave, that we have that little flexibility. And it's difficult to quantify. So that would be the thing that I think I would put here.
Chair Locke.
I would actually really like to speak to the corrections and the deputies separately. And it's because just using the numbers that have been provided by the sheriff, the corrections really look like they could pay for themselves and help us retain staff, help us retain employees, help us keep morale okay if we have several employees go on paid leave for any number of reasons, be it paternity, injury, whatever. It would reduce the likelihood of injuries. It can increase the availability of groups. If you are not well staffed in the corrections, you can't move people to where they need to go. So it's much more of a lockdown situation. Am I correct in my statements here, Sheriff? I don't want to describe it inaccurately, but
yeah. So as I put in the memo before, this is money we're gonna pay. Now we may not. You may not decide to add 4 deputies and 4 correctional officers. You may say, let's balance it out with what the overtime usually is and what we think we can save with correctional officers. That's still very beneficial. We're going to pay the money we have to pay, whether it's in overtime or whether it's in regular employees, because the union says we have to have a certain number of employees working on a shift. And so now keep in mind, the jail consolidated facility is still relatively new. And so we are still trying to figure out that good balance of staff too. So I'm not necessarily saying we wouldn't be able to reduce positions in the future. I just don't know that at this point in time because that is so new. And there are no inmates out of county right now. And so that has really helped for the last couple of months with transports. But it's a tough environment. And the more employees we have, the better we can take care of their mental health, the fewer that we're going to lose to other agencies. And so those are all things that I'm keeping in mind and I'd like for you to consider too.
Yeah. So to finish my comment on that, so for the corrections, I support adding all 4, but I understand that other members of the board would like to add 1 or 2 and balance out with higher overtime. The difference for why I support that for corrections, but not for deputies, it's the salary or the training cost. Even if it's coming out of PSST, it's so much in year 1. Just adding 1 deputy training and salary is $205,000, and the average overtime for all overtime is only just over $400,000. So even just adding 1 deputy is not going to cancel out that overtime. So I would support just adding the overtime or appropriately budgeting for the overtime as opposed to how we have it in our budget book right now.
Ms. Carter.
I see you're doing pretty good on social media as far as hiring. I can remember at one point, 21, 22, you were down like 22, 21 deputies. So, I mean, you have made great improvements. So, I mean, would you just say that you have maybe just 5 vacancies and not 8?
So deputy wise, we currently have 5 vacancies. Corrections wise, and you're right, corrections is the one that we've consistently been down about 10 since I got elected in 2018. I believe right now we have 3 vacancies, which is great. And unfortunately, over the last 8 years, this is the fewest vacancies we've had, which is, I just want to make sure we don't get to the point where we're back down, because then officers start getting hurt and things like that. So again, it's kind of like balancing what's the best thing, and I don't have the best answer for you.
Thank you.
Spanish show that.
So in your memo back in, I think August it was, you mentioned that you had several officers who may be called up to reserve duty. Do you know how many officers that currently are reserves or may be called up? Specifically, like National Guard is the one I'm mainly worried about.
So I have, I wouldn't say several. I have 2 correctional officers that are on, that have been called up to active duty. And I have 1 deputy that is on active duty that probably will not come back. He's serving as a recruiter here locally. And we have to keep those positions open, or at the very minimum, we have to make sure there's a position for them when they come back. So that's the struggle with that. I have a deputy on, that was in an accident and is on workers' comp for at least the next 6 months. We're paying her a full salary, and that's a position I don't have. And that's really where that balance comes in, with a couple of extra staff in each division. Helps whenever things like that come up, helps us be able to fulfill our obligations, or it's overtime.
Is that, are you counting the people who aren't here but you have to keep their positions open as part of those 5? Or is that in addition to those 5?
No, that's in addition. So I'm not counting us being, when I say we're 5 deputies down, those are 5 spots that I have open. That does not include the person who is on active duty.
Or the person who's on leave?
Or on leave, yes.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely for giving the 4 correctional officers, I believe, if we remember the orange sheet, it was like over $400,000 or more that we were paying in overtime. And I know that'll soak a lot of it up. And even with the possible FOP, raises that might come down the line, we still are going to break even or probably save a little bit of money with that. The deputies, I was kind of against that before I came in here, but I could see how you might need that actual buffer that comes in. This would be able to have, hey, we actually do fill all positions at the sheriff's office, but we only have the extra 1 or 2 open that we do hire somebody, and just how attrition works, we're going to lose somebody next week. So I can see both of those. Thank you.
So I was going to propose something, and Travis may have some thoughts on this, but I'm wondering how much flexibility there is between the 2 budgets, between law enforcement and corrections, so that we as a board could say to the sheriff, you take the total dollar amount from what we know is going to be spent in overtime anyways, and decide which positions are your priority to fill. I know that you've spoken in the past about the sergeant being high on your priority list, but I realize you would need to draw from the corrections funds in order to cover that salary. So I'm wondering whether there's flexibility to do that budget-wise.
So the one thing I would say is that if we're looking at reducing overtime by adding staff, we're going to get the best bang for our buck in corrections, because adding 1 or 2 correctional officer positions, and then even more than that, that's great. But we're going to see a direct result in reduction of overtime in those positions. Deputy-wise, however, there are 4 different shifts of deputies, and so we're probably not going to see a significant reduction in overtime on deputies without adding 4, because that would be 1 on each shift. And so I don't want to, I've always been transparent with y'all. I don't want to give the impression that this staff is going to dramatically reduce the overtime cost, because it's probably not. In corrections, it will. I believe it will. Deputy-wise, it'll provide that buffer we need. That will hopefully get us to at least fully staffed. And if we can maintain being fully staffed, then we can start talking about attrition and start talking about, do we need that many positions, because we know we're going to be fully staffed and we know what we can do. We're just never there.
Ms. Furtado.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this. We are talking about, I just want to leave it right now just for corrections. We are talking about reducing your amount of overtime equal to the amount we would be putting on full-time staff, including benefits. Is it a zero sum?
So my number was including benefits. Yes. The number that I provided the county board in my memo was including benefits.
So, I mean, I think this is the kind of thing where this is the purview, if you're not asking for any additional money, I think this is the purview of that elected official to say, I want money in this column and not that column. That said, if you come back to us and say, I was wrong, and I actually need $300,000 of overtime on top, you know what I mean? Like I did this and I still need all that overtime, then that would be a very hard conversation, which, to be perfectly blunt, would probably mean us going back to the way it was before. Do you see what I'm like? I could support it as long as it works. If we get to the point where you're like, I was wrong and I still need all this overtime money, well then, we'd have to have a real conversation about that, because that would then be an effective budget increase.
Yes, I don't mind admitting if I'm wrong. And you don't know what overtime is going to come up. You really don't.
Right.
And so I would say for correctional officers really helps with making a dent in that overtime. Can we zero out that overtime budget? No, because we got holidays and we got everything else that comes out of that overtime budget. Go ahead.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this doesn't zero it out.
No, we will not be zero out. I will never stand up here and tell you we're going to zero out the overtime budget. That's not going to happen. I will reiterate that even if you add 4 correctional officer positions, we're probably never going to be fully staffed, and we're always going to have that balance of some extra money somewhere. So that's I don't know that, but out of the last 8 years, that's the balance that I have seen.
Mr. Pugh.
Yeah, sorry, a whole bunch tonight. Usually I don't talk much. The issue I see is the what's in this book is different from what you have projected for overtime. The amount in the book, if I remember right, was a lot less. Correct?
May I speak to that? Yeah. I was going to ask the same question because in the book, it's budgeted at $173,441. Dustin had a request for request A, either adding $212,846 to bring it up to $386,287, or B, adding 4 new correction officers, which would be year 1 cost $348,604 if we added all 4, or a year 2 or recurring year costs of $318,604. But in his memo, Sheriff let us know that our average overtime cost over the last 4 years has been $242,000, and that was during those 4 years. Many of those were with a much smaller jail than we have right now, with many fewer people. So I think that the only year that really matters is 2025, when we've been working with the jail we have right now, and that one overtime is expected to be $580,000. So our 173 that's budgeted isn't accurate, and I don't think that even if we gave you all 4 of these people, that would be an accurate number. So I don't know that it's accurate that we're bringing it to 0 on the budget that we were presented, but I do believe that it brings it to less than 0 of what we would actually be spending. When I had made this proposal previously, I said, I don't have a source of funding, but I know we're going to pay for it no matter what, because that's how overtime works when we have contractual and statutory obligations.
So what I'm hearing is the primary interest here is in corrections, and maybe saying we want you to use that estimated overtime to fund those positions instead of paying it as overtime.
Which estimated overtime? The one in the sheets or the one in the book?
The one in his memo.
Okay, I just want to make sure we got it clear. Thank you.
Ms. Furtado.
Just so that I am clear, this is a Travis question. That dollar amount then for that column would be an addition to the hit on the general fund? From what, so for your general fund, would that then be a hit? Or would some of that be a hit?
Most of it should be covered if we use that projected overtime to cover those positions. It should keep that chart pretty flat.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this one? Okay, I think we've talked that through. So that is the last one that I have received any proposals for. But we have a couple more on our list because I know folks expressed interest in looking at these, and that was the autopsy assistant for the coroner's office and the VAC positions. So did anybody want to share any proposals for those? Mr. Pugh.
Yes, I don't have a proposal. I do apologize for the autopsy assistant, but it's one of the things we're just going to keep spending more money on autopsies. It's not going to get cheaper. It's going to get more expensive every time. And if in order to get a pathologist, we need an autopsy assistant to come in. That's something we're just going to have to do because that office is going to get more and more expensive. Lori's going to have to come to us every 2 or 3 months, ask for more money. And I know it's something that impacts our budget. It's going to be a negative thing to it. But if we're actually going to get that office to be, those positions to be zero or even make some money, we're just going to have to do this. It's something we're just going to have to do.
I just want to point out the coroner is here if anybody has specific questions for her. Ms. Carter.
I know this has been a lingering issue for a couple of years, and it's time to just make this official. I think in the long run, we'll be, with the autopsies being local, we'll be saving money instead of sending this work out outside of the county. Is that correct?
Would the coroner like to come up? And my understanding is we can't do autopsies without the pathologist, and that we still don't have. But would you like to speak to that?
What was the question?
Whether we'll still have to send autopsies outside of the county to be performed.
Would there be any cost savings with this position?
And we need an autopsy assistant and a pathologist to do autopsies in this county. Until we have both, they'll have to be sent out.
So wouldn't it make more sense to wait until we get the pathologist before we add a autopsy assistant position?
You could look at it that way, but then you would be paying a physician to not do anything while we're still sending them out. They need an assistant. And until we could find one that was fully trained, possibly, but that's not usually the case.
Mr. Thorsland.
Yeah, Lori explained that pretty well. In order to get a pathologist to come, it's a good idea to have the assistant here already. And I think you just explained it very well. If we get a pathologist without the assistant position, the pathologist is labeling jars or something.
Probably sitting at home.
Yeah, waiting to have the assistant position filled. And we know we should probably, I don't want to call a person a piece of equipment, but we need to have the whole suite set up, and that includes the assistant before we can put a pathologist in it.
I think Ms. Rogers, then Lakshan, and then Vanish there.
I also support creating this position. And Lori, if you could talk to what they would do until we got a pathologist, because I think you have a need for them without us having a pathologist. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. We have an office full of autopsy related things that have never been disposed of. Tissue samples, histology, DNA cards, just the morgue in general. And we're slowly working through those things. When we get a little downtime, which isn't often, someone will go do a few more. But that is years and years worth of items that need disposed of. And we're out of room, really.
I think Lakshan and then finish.
And I think one thing that you had mentioned as well was that this will help to alleviate some of the staffing issues right now in your office. If there was somebody who wasn't necessarily doing the autopsy assistant position, they would be able to, and by doing the work like you're talking about, the disposal of samples and things like that, alleviate some of the stress on the staff that are currently in the office. And that's kind of where I was looking at earlier. I'm looking at Michelle. The things like the travel and conference budgets for a lot of the general fund offices.
Just to clarify, I don't
Oh,
feel it would alleviate any work on the current deputies. This is kind of just filler stuff that people are doing. They're not required. If we're busy, we don't do it.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be able to do the work of the deputies.
Okay. Okay. Well, then that answers my question. Thank you.
We had Vintage Thernot and then Sullard and then Locke.
So I'm seeing that you mentioned that the staff could assess. You say specialized staff would assist with tissue sampling, histology preparation, and DNA collection. Is that something this particular position could do, or is that something you would need the pathologist to do?
Collection?
You said as volume and complexity of cases increase, so has the need for specialized staff to assist with tissue sampling, histology preparation, and DNA collection to meet investigative, legal, and public health obligations?
Yes, the collection would be during the autopsies, and that's something the assistant would assist with.
Okay, but if they are not doing it, they can't do that outside of sending it off for an autopsy. They have to do that as part of the autopsy.
Or the deputies do it when we don't need autopsies.
Okay, so this happens regardless of if an autopsy is necessary or not.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is something that a assistant would be able to do.
No, they would only do that if there was an autopsy. Otherwise, we typically don't bring them back, and we can get whatever samples we need wherever we are.
Oh, on site. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is not.
And that would be the deputy.
That would be the deputy.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mr. Sullard.
I'm supportive of the idea of the position here, but we kind of already talked about this last time, and the plan today was to bring a plan. So for folks who are trying to advocate for it, what's the plan to pay for it?
We had Chair Locke and then Ms. Carter.
Hi, Lori. This is such a chicken and the egg problem for us because if we bring in a trained autopsy tech and we have them essentially doing busy work, could they even transport people to Springfield for the autopsies for that? Is that something that we could have an autopsy tech do before we have a pathologist?
Sure.
Okay, so at least there's something. So yeah, because I'm worried we'd recruit someone qualified and burn them out, and then they'd leave.
That's also a concern.
And then with the pathologist search, I know there have been lots of difficulties. We're not a preferred destination for the very few numbers of people. Is this the primary reason that we've gotten no's or no interest? Is it the primary reason that we don't have a tech? Or could you explain like how autopsies are done elsewhere? I guess we've talked before about like, is it one at a time or what would the autopsy?
It depends on your pathologist.
Okay.
When you do multiple autopsies at a time, you have multiple techs. So each autopsy tech is doing one, and then the pathologist will come in.
Okay.
So I don't know how to explain it better. Like the autopsy assistant does a lot of work. So the pathologist can go between the two, so they can do two at a time. I haven't really looked or started anything to find a pathologist. It doesn't make sense to me to try to do that when we don't have the staffing to support it. When I looked at the previous search, I was really surprised at how many people were actually interested in coming.
And is our current autopsy suite up to snuff? Like if we hired this person today, could we go out and recruit a doctor? No, so there's physical work that needs to happen.
And it's not a lot. And after the budget hearing, then the grant person, Kate, reached out to me and is trying to help us find a grant.
Okay, and there is still $30,000 of ARPA money that I know had been allocated as well for some point in your office. Okay. Gosh, I'd love to create this position, but not fund it for a few months so that we can have the work done, right? Because we can't, if the space isn't ready, it doesn't matter if we have all the people, right?
Correct.
But if the space isn't ready, we can't attract a pathologist, even if we have the assistant.
Exactly.
So I know in years past, maybe 2 years ago, we did a state's attorney that we only funded for half a year. So we funded it for the second half of the year. We need this so that we can turn your office back into a revenue producer like it used to be. But if we're not there yet, I don't want to create the position and fund it and then recruit somebody good and lose them. So I'd be supportive of maybe funding.
But we also
a
have to
half year?
train that person.
Yeah. Knowing that there's physical work to be done that we have to get done, and that's its own thing. I wouldn't be supportive of a full year of it, but I think that other board members want to speak to it. I would propose that we do half year funding so that we can just budget to plan for later in the year when this could be useful, but I wouldn't want to budget the full year. But that's my thought.
Do you have a way to fund that?
I do not, but I will go looking through the book right now.
I think it was brought up earlier when we do autopsies back here, funds itself.
Okay.
Until
we had Miss Carter and then Farney and then Lockshin.
How much is the salary for an anthropologist, yearly salary?
It depends. So there's a huge shortage. Now the trend is that you're going to offer them a base salary with benefits, retirement. And I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. My opinion would be we would offer them what we know we would pay. We average about 220 autopsies a year, I think.
So do you think that having the autopsy assistant would get us by not having that anthropologist here? Am I saying that right?
I don't understand. Well, it's pathologist, but that's fine. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know what you meant.
Pathologist. I'm sorry. I'm saying it wrong. So having the autopsy assistant, would that be sufficient or suffice not having the pathologist?
No. I mean, I wouldn't need them either. Like once they were finished and I don't know how I could sit at a desk and do that all day, just disposal stuff. That's why it kind of works out that we just do it for a couple hours when we have time or need something to not think about. But I don't know what we would do other than get them trained. It's not just they can't just read a book and learn how to do it. This would either have to bring someone in to the facility to teach them or have them go somewhere else to learn. And it'd have to be someplace else that was willing to teach them.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Farney, then Lockshin, then Wilson.
First off, I agree with Mr. Sullard. Without a way to pay for it, I don't see how it's done. But I'm also hearing a lot of, if we get a pathologist, when we get the pathologist, and then, yeah, they can do this and they can't do that, but maybe it's things we do as we have time to do it. It's not sounding like a real solid plan to move forward. The pathologist position, because of the shortages, the position's been unfilled for several years. We've in the past attempted to hire someone. I just don't see where this works. And a year from now, we're going to be looking at this going, well, we hired an autopsy assistant, and there's no sign of a pathologist. And 2 years from now, well, we've got an autopsy assistant, but still no sign of a pathologist. And it's not a problem unique to Champaign County. This is a problem everywhere, because it's a very limited number of specialists in this position. It doesn't make sense to me, and so I can't support this one.
Ms. Lockshin.
I guess my question is, in the original budget proposals, you talked about deputy coroners as well. Is that something that a deputy coroner at the same rate would be of more use?
Absolutely. That I'm surprised those 7 positions that I need critically aren't here, but the one that is only going to be useful if we get a pathologist is.
Okay, I'm sorry. When you were speaking about these originally, it seemed like the autopsy assistant sounded more critical to you at the time. I apologize if I misunderstood.
No.
Okay.
That's a position that's only useful if we have a pathologist, but we can't get a pathologist without one. So it's
right.
That. But deputy coroners, we need now.
We had Mr. Wilson, and then I wasn't sure if Mr. Cagle, did you have your hand? Okay, and then Portato.
Well, thank you for being here. I don't see the need for this. Based on how you're describing what the individual will do until pathologist shows up, I'm at a loss to figure out what they would do other than if there was a particular need of that skill set for some reason, can that be contracted out temporarily rather than having a full-time employee sitting at their desk waiting for a pathologist to show
There
up?
are temporary services that you can hire in.
So maybe that would be a better way to go with a temporary service as the need suited rather than have a full-time slot for.
They are very expensive to have them come in.
So I would just add, and then, sorry, I do, but I would just want to add, I would love to find a way to support an additional deputy as opposed to the autopsy assistant. I do not see any room in the coroner's budget to do that. Her budget is very bare bones as it is. Nobody has come to me with a proposal, and I'm sorry, I don't have a way to propose that without cutting somebody else's budget. So, I mean, this is something I think we absolutely need to work on, but without a proposal here tonight, then we would essentially be saying we want to add to the deficit if we want to give a position. So we had Furtado and then Carter.
Jenny asked one of the questions I was going to ask. Is this actually what you would have preferred?
The deputy coroner?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No. Yeah, deputy versus this.
Yes.
And I do agree that without a funding mechanism, it would just be a general fund hit, just a perpetual general fund hit.
You could look at our overtime budget. I mean, we have one deputy on at a time. So any call in, any vacation, we had a call in last night. There's overtime. We have somebody out on medical leave right now. Every shift that's covered of theirs is overtime.
Do you think your overtime would be enough? What you're spending in overtime? Have you done the math on, we just heard from the sheriff. He has done the math on if we, have this many more corrections officers, this is anticipated.
That's where I got the idea. So no, I did not run the numbers, but we do a lot. We have a lot.
Do you think it would be a break even?
I would think it would come close if it's not more.
Because the overtime, I did check that, and it's only budgeted at 28,000. Is that an under?
Oh yes, I've already transferred money into that, and right now we're sitting at, I believe it's $19,000 in a deficit.
So
that budget adjustment will go in sometime next week.
Travis, could you give us what the actual overtime figures are on her staff?
So last year, the coroner's office spent $48,813 on overtime.
And last year included that time that I've talked about multiple times where we didn't get paid for the hours we worked. So now we are. So that is going to increase.
What is it full board to get with benefits to get another deputy?
It's on the.
It was
roughly the same,
88.
yeah, right around.
88. Okay. All right. So we're not there yet.
There's also an additional 36,947 in temporary. Is that those are your temporary deputy coroners, right? That's
Correct.
that category. So
Correct.
if you had this additional position, can we cut back on that allocation as well?
One additional, that would give us still one deputy at a time, and we'd still be working the 12-hour shifts. So there would still be built-in overtime, 8 hours for each staff every payday. And then we would have to adjust with the union to cover call-ins or vacations. That still wouldn't give us two people on at a time.
Okay. I was going to go Rogers, Pugh, Cagle, Carter. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I wasn't done. So I apologize. I mostly was just asking clarifying questions. I would much more likely support a one-time, I think we could probably fund it from public safety sales tax fund, contractual dollar amount to do the kind of cleanup stuff that you need to do that you were talking about, than a position. I think if we are going to look towards a position in this office, deputy coroner makes a lot more sense to me than this. But I do think your point about the cleanup, I think it would just be a general fund hit, but I would support some sort of one-time increase to your contractual service in order to bring in the kind of service that you need to do that kind of the work that you said that autopsy assistant could do. That I would support, 25K or something like that to help do that. And I also want you to know, I fully recognize that your office is understaffed, but I also recognize that to hire 7 people would be.
That would just based on the research I was asked to do by the
would
county
be
board.
half.
I only thought we needed 4.
Would be well more than $500,000 a year, and as you can see, we don't have that. So I think this is a long-term question. In a short term, I would support a contractual dollar amount, at least to do the cleanup.
Okay. Are your hands no longer up down there? Okay. Carter, and then we'll move down.
Just to piggyback off of Ms. Furtado, the fact that she's understaffed and doesn't have a adequate budget, and then we look at the executive's office with Michelle's Jet's extra $60,000 pay increase, I would propose putting Mr. Chris Smith second in charge, the director of the facilities department, adding an extra 10 to 15 increase on his salary, and then using the remainder of that money to go to the coroner's office.
That's not possible because that's the facility director's salary you're taking from. Okay, I mean, you can propose that you don't want a facility director, but that would be.
I want to propose that we take that $60,000 from Michelle Jett, because we have departments that are struggling. That's what I'm proposing. And being the chair and the vice chair of that facilities committee, I'm just wondering why that has not been spoken upon.
Okay,
Thank you.
One second. We're not the chairs of the facility committee. We're the finance chairs. But no, we're going to move on. I think there were other people who had their hands up. Rogers, Pugh, and Farney, if he still does.
Hi, Lori. So we spoke and you told me that you believe that you could fund several positions. So I want to give you an opportunity now to explain to the board where you think that money will come from, since they keep requesting a proposal.
One was with the temp staff and part of the overtime stuff. The other was out of my special fund. Like, I offered that up a long time ago. I need help. We don't need stuff. I'm not quite sure because I can't figure it out quite yet. But
is that possible?
What if I'm going to propose that we give the coroner maybe a week to put together a proposal that can be shared with us on this. I'm sensing that there's broad support to do something for your office, but we don't have a proposal in front of us. So we can't really move forward without one.
I wasn't asked for one until just now.
What was it, last year, the year before, we spent $250,000 in deficit without any proposals? Was that last year or the year before? And everybody seemed fine with that then. This is something that is really needed. It's possible if Travis can help her get the projected overtime that she may have to spend this year, so we get that number, and help her look at her special fund numbers too. Maybe we can try to get some better numbers to come back with. But like, once again, we went to the deficit, was it last year or the year before, with 5 positions for $250,000, and nobody said boo back then, Hurley. So I'm going to say that.
So then I think the question here, I mean, the details can be worked out, but the question is, does this board want to go into deficit, or do we want to ask the coroner to work with Travis to try to find a way to fund a position or some temporary, not temporary, but the contractual proposal to get the physical work done that Ms. Furtado proposed in a way that does not increase the deficit on the general fund? Ms. Rogers.
I think I would like to see both. So I would like Travis to help the coroner come up with a proposal, knowing that I support it. And so if we have to take on some deficit, she is understaffed. But I would like to see a proposal to see if there's a way that we could reduce any deficit.
Ms. Lakshan.
What I keep going back and forth and asking about, I guess, in my head, but do I continue asking about? I mean, what can, and this may be more of a Travis and Michelle question, what can we say, hey, maybe this shouldn't be in the budget for this department? Can we take from this department to fund the coroner's request or to fund a particularly underfunded office? That's where I was asking before about the county board training and travel, like things like that. There's a lot of, as I was going through the general fund requests, there are a lot of conference and travel that have been increased. A lot of them have stayed flat and have gone down, and I appreciate that, but there's quite a few that have been increased, and I things like that I feel like I want to see justification from. And I know we've already moved on with the general, like we're proposing the $2 million Band-Aid, but I still think there's room for cuts. Within specifically, I was looking at those line items, but there may be other line items that are not necessary. Like, I mean, I hate to call out. There was one I was looking at for the circuit clerk's office that was $762 in medical expenses, and I'm like, what is that? Because that was something that was never in there before. And it was just this year, like, or maybe in the last year or two, like $762 for medical. Like, what is that? What, yeah, okay.
Travis.
So I think that kind of goes back to our earlier discussion where for the 27 budget, we need to go line by line and figure everything out, what's being spent, what can be cut, what can't, especially when we're talking about other departments than the one we're trying to fund.
Right. And so in trying to do that, though, is there any room this year to try and fund an office that is understaffed and struggling? Like, can we still look at any of that a little more critically, or are we just going to say, okay, $2 million, everybody gets what they asked for, even though some of it may not really be necessary?
It's possible. Michelle has something she wants to add real quick.
That's a board decision, right? That's a process strategy conversation for you all to have. If at this point on September 30th, with the budget going on file at the October board meeting, if you all want to at this point be doing line by line cuts. So can you? Technically, yes. The conversation of do you want to and should you is for you all to have.
So this is why I asked you all to come with proposals tonight.
Well, that was the work that I had done, and I apologize, but it got kind of this conversation took a different track, and I wasn't, sure where I should be coming in with this sort of thing. But yes, I was looking at other department budgets. I was looking at specifically travel and conference, but there are things that jumped out, like the medical thing. That's a little bit of money, but it's like, what's that for? So I started, as I was researching, I was taking a more critical look through the binder, and I may be the only one who is interested in doing that at this point. I know that that's a lot of work that a lot of people would be asked to take on for the different departments. And maybe that is the work we do for 27, but I'm just trying to figure out how to relieve Lori's workload now. And maybe that is a conversation with Travis and seeing what we can fund and what would work best with your overtime.
So we can't reconvene as an entire body in time to, we can't say, bring us a proposal next time, because then it's too late as this entire body. But I think what we could do tonight is give instructions to Travis and Lori and say, within the next week, if there's a way for you to come up with a way to fund this through overtime and other lines in your budget, then you have this body's support. I don't think we have the time to go line by line through other people's budgets unless somebody has that proposal here tonight. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Not that we're going line for line through every single item, but one particular line item was mentioned that we have a question of, is it really $700,000 needed for medical whatevers?
700.
760 something dollars.
So
Yeah.
$700 bazillion,
62.
whatever's, but isn't it possible that maybe Lori can talk to the clerk and then they could work together and then within a week say, okay, here's why, I don't know.
No, Jeff, it was $762.
Oh, that's nothing.
That's all.
Forget it. Yeah, I got to replace my windshield. That's probably, but anyway.
Ms. Carter.
So just for clarification purposes, are we going to go for the autopsy assistant or the deputy coroner?
Well, I think we as a board need to give them direction. And what I'm hearing is that the priority for the coroner would be the deputy, not the autopsy assistant.
Correct.
And so, you know, obviously we cannot fund 7 deputies, but I think if the coroner and Travis can sit down in the next week and find a way by doing the overtime calculations, and you had mentioned another line in your budget, if you could take a look at that, and if there's a way to fund one position without hitting the general fund, then I don't see why this body would not support that. Mr. Thorsland.
I'm old, so maybe I forgot, but when we started this conversation, we had this list that's there, column E and F, and we were told that these won't increase the deficit if we add all that up, that this is still a zero, it's a wash. So I know that the proposal before us here from Lori is for this assistant, autopsy assistant, but as an elected official, if we just give that 88K in their budget for personnel, Stephanie, who I trust, is shaking her head the other way, that Lori can't then decide what to do with it? Or if we just decide instead we're talking about the assistant, is it still a wash?
No, let me be clear. She said most of them were a wash. She said that several times. Most of them were a wash.
Okay.
These last 3, there weren't actual.
Oh, I thought it was just the last 2.
The ones that we actually received proposals for were all wash.
Yeah. So
Okay.
these last 3, there wasn't an actual way to pay it proposal.
Okay.
But boards had voiced support last time, so Travis wanted to include those.
So this is really the only one that's in discussion because the other 2, the VAC can do whatever they want.
Well, we'll discuss that next, but. Okay, any further discussion on the coroner's position? Mr. Cagle.
Just one quick question. What is, you mentioned the volume of autopsies you do is 220. What do we pay per autopsy when we have to send it out?
Everything included about $1,950.
Okay, thank you.
And how much would we make if we were doing them in-house?
So the pathologist would be $1,250, and that's all we would pay. Other counties would come in, pay the pathologist directly, and pay us a $450 facility fee.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. How much have the autopsies cost the last few years? Because I think it's gone up a lot recently.
So when we did autopsies in our facility, the pathologist was $850. That had never been increased. So that was in talks to increase anyway. The standard in this area is $1,250 per autopsy. It's really the extra fees. So we are paying now that $450 facility fee. And I say that because it includes the facility, the consumables, all that. If we have to do x-rays, we have to pay them extra. That's on top of that. Histology's on top of that, and then transportation. So it's really the facility fee and the transportation that is, in addition, that creates that $1,950. So there are extras on top of that, but that's the average price. and where we would only pay the $1,250 and we would start making that $450 per autopsy again. And that was about $90,000 average. Like our autopsy budget was $168,000, I believe. So last year, I'd have to look at what the end was, but this year, well, we're already, as of tomorrow, the 1st, when we get the bill, we're in a hole. I'm not going to be able to pay him till I get that budget adjustment in again this week. And it's, the average. I can't predict how many autopsies we're going to do, but August was very busy, or September was very busy. So it's probably going to be $30,000 or more dollars.
Yeah, and we just did a budget amendment to increase her line for the autopsies.
Yeah, that's already gone.
Yeah.
So you told me I had to do them in $50,000 increments. So I'm going to do them about every 6 weeks.
Yeah. Ms. Fortato.
Yeah, I'll say I was on the board when we had the contractual pathologist, and almost every year we had to do budget amendments from the general fund in order to pay him. And maybe I'm wrong and I'm misunderstanding, because I just remember those conversations. It wasn't like, oh, we're doing this and we're making that money back. It was just a general fund hit. We under budgeted it every year. It drove me insane. I would say, why did we under budget it enough? They would increase it and the cost would go up again, because it is very expensive and some of the testing and things are very expensive. So I do think I'd like, not to go back to the pathologist question, but for the long term, I do think I'd like an analysis, like a market analysis of like what we anticipate, like what are the counties that we would anticipate using the services? How many autopsies did they do? How much money do you think we could make? Looking back when we had the contractual autopsy person, what, like the last 5 years of his existence here, did we actually make money or did we lose money? Because if we were actually making money on that, then the conversation and the tenor of it that we had then was just very misleading, because
I believe that might be the case.
yeah. So just so you
What
know,
I see, we definitely made money.
yeah. So from Lori's from the coroner coming and asking us for more money for autopsies is not new. Was happening when we had a pathologist, and I don't know. I think it's maybe just a difficult thing to predict how many you need, or there's a lot of reasons. And there were multiple times where the past coroner had to come to us more than once and ask for budget increases. In fact, almost every year of his existence until the last year, I think that he had to come back and ask for budget adjustments specifically for autopsies. And one time was like over $100,000, if I recall correctly.
I know last year, because it was the same budget where we were budgeted at $150 per autopsy. So I know they came in last year.
And I think, Travis, were you going to work on adjusting that line for fiscal year 26? Because I know we're under budget there.
That would be a board decision. Historically, the budget has fluctuated so much year to year on that. The board has budgeted low and wanted budget requests so they could keep a better idea of how that year is going. But I could increase it in 26 to a higher number and in theory have fewer budget requests. But that's a decision up to you guys.
Ms. Rogers.
I just want to circle back to what Stephanie said. I would like to see more information about the pathologist, because I know that you and I had conversations about maybe sharing a pathologist with McLean County. And
That we did, that wasn't an option. We tried.
Oh, okay. And they said no?
No, yeah.
Okay. Well, just whatever you could provide us, I think that'd be helpful. Okay.
Okay. So I think direction on this is if we can try to find a way that doesn't increase the deficit to fund one deputy. The board supports that. And we're moving on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will support as many as they can find money for. So.
Yeah. Okay, so now we have the two VAC positions. I also did not receive any specific proposals for these. Does anyone have one that they want to share? Mr. Sellard.
I don't have a proposal. I have a question. I'm seeing choose one. So is it are these pulled from the bigger packet, or is it in the bigger packet? Did the choose one refer to 2 positions, or is the choose one referring to these 2 between superintendent and admin assistant?
I'm not sure what choose one refers to. Mr. Kegel.
I think it's just the drop down from the form. It just didn't get updated for the position status.
It's meaningless.
It should probably be position exists or position needs created for either of those 2.
Mr. Barney and Furtado.
So I just wanted to comment on the administrative assistant position because there were some comments made earlier about the discrepancy between the amount that's on the vacant positions and the amount that's on the new request. The actual request from the VAC, what they want to operate their office, is for $18,402 for a part-time position. That is their request. That's what we should be considering. That's what they say they need to operate.
Furtado.
I think unless something has changed in our legal understanding of our obligation, that when the state passed the .02 EAV for this, the last memo that I had seen about it had been from Matt Bannock, and his legal advice was, as long as it's under that .02, which is about $1 million a year, that they get it. It's a straight out general fund hit. And this is what happens when the state passes a requirement without funding it. And we see this all the time, unfunded mandates. So I don't, unless there's been some new, fresh legal understanding that I'm not aware of, it's just a general fund hit.
I think there is some newer legal information. Steve, do you want to share that?
I really don't want to touch on any additional legal information, but VAC did not make these requests through the formal budget process. These came up after a VAC board meeting after we were already into the budget process. And in order for us to provide the funding, they do need to follow our process, and they did not in this case.
Okay, I think it was Wilson, then Carter.
I would actually wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I'll just take it for what it is. That's multiple requests were made to include in the budget were absolutely denied to even be thought about. So whether it's included in their process or not, frankly, it doesn't have to be. However, the superintendent multiple times has notified the administrative staff of what they were looking for. And that's also recorded as record in the meeting minutes of the VAC board, which I believe was also the administrative staff's requirement. But that being said, this $29,000, $30,000 could easily be offset by a job that has not been fulfilled for over 3 years. We could take the planner, $62,000 salary, and just make it a half-time planner, since you're probably not going to find a full-time planner anyway. So if you turn that full-time planner into a half-time planner, that more than covers the cost of the VAC superintendent $6 an hour raise and the half-time VAC admin assistant.
Ms. Carter, then Pugh.
I would just like to ask all board members, have you been to the VAC office? Okay. I think she needs help. She's been doing it by herself. And this is a clear yes. for me. The fact that I know for a fact Mr. Wilson, what Mr. Wilson is saying is true. Everything that has come through the VAC has been shunned upon. We don't have it, but yet we got $60,000 to give to an administrative assistant to increase her salary, but everything else is no, 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 no. Make it make sense. She needs help. She needs to be able to run the VAC adequately with staff. It's a mess in there. It is. And I'm telling you, I was blown away that you even got the position because it was so much coming in. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for staying in that position and not quitting like others have, because it's been a lot on you. It's been a lot. There should be no restrictions on the help that she needs to run that office. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh?
Yes, I think it's a steal. They could be asking us for a lot more money for a lot more different things, and we just would have to pay it, and we couldn't say anything about it. And we just come out of the general fund. So the work that they do is critical.
They refuse.
I see the guys at the Legion. I talk to these people up in my neighborhood all the time. And like I said, I would have stopped there. I'll stop.
Any other discussion? Ms. Walker, did you?
I just want to say for clarification, when I started the budget process, if I had done something wrong in not doing it correctly, because this was my first time, I met with Travis, I met with Steve right after we had our budget meeting, and I informed him of what my board had stated. Like I told you before, I'm going to make it work with or without an assistant, but I made the proposal to cut the position into a part-time position. I went and I looked for another way to do that, but you know, everything Ms. Carter has said is true. You know, anytime I email and ask about anything, it's no that. I've been approached by other VSOs and some surrounding counties. They're trying to do a class action lawsuit. I'm not interested in being involved in any of that kind of stuff. I understand that the county is stressed. Whatever amount of money the board gives me, I do to the best of my ability to honor the bylaws and things like that, to handle that money with respect and dignity, because my name is attached to it, you know, and it's hard work. I get cussed out daily. I had a person show up here today that I had to come down to the recorder's office because I wanted to mention, you know, about their DD-214s. I have went back and audited that office myself, read the files. When I came in there, it was a mess. They got stuff all on the floor, you know. And I have my own issues, you know, and I want to do a good job doing this. But I'm not going to do this job for pennies. I am the least paid superintendent in the surrounding area. I'm sorry. I asked for $6 to compensate the money that I am missing from the tax-free money that I was getting and earning because of my disability. And if you guys don't want to give me the $6 and you don't want to give me an assistant, then you're going to end up dealing with a bigger situation than that minor money that I'm asking for.
Yep, you will. Oops.
Ms. Furtado?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this, to be honest, I mean, I think we have to support it just legally. Like, I think that's the case. And I just think it's a general fund hit. I said that before. I think put it in the budget. It's a general fund hit. It's the way it is. That's what happens when your state legislature does things without talking to literally anyone and doesn't do math. But that's what it is. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Chair Luck?
I just wanted to put on record that I support this, and thank you. Thank you. I know it's when you're the only one there and you're dealing with people in a crisis and they're there asking for help, and these are not people who want to ask for help at all. That is hard work. Thank you. And yes, we don't have a choice, and yes, we have to fund it. So thank you. and I support it.
Mr. Wilson.
Just one more comment. We haven't hired a planner for 3 years at $60,000. If you just change the planner to a half-time job, then it's not a hit to the general fund. That's a simple decision to make. So either you want to make the hit to the general fund for $30,000 or just change the position from a full-time planner that hasn't been hired for 3 years and make it half-time, and it's $30,000.
Ms. Furtado.
I mean, since we're talking about cutting the budget of somebody who's here and sat through the whole meeting, could we at least hear from John to hear what he has to think about us just talking about cutting his budget?
Well, to begin with, I want to go back and double check. I don't think it's been vacant. It wasn't vacant all of 2022, I don't believe. But the point remains, it's not filled. And yeah, we just filled 2 zoning officer positions, which frankly, I was more concerned about getting zoning officers than a planner. We will need a planner eventually. I don't know when we'll get one hired. I was hoping to do recruiting this coming spring, fresh graduates, try to get a planner. Be that as it may, we've gone a couple years without that position. And if the board isn't missing those projects, you know, that's the way I look at it. That's the board's decision. If you want a half-time planner, you'll live with half-time planner output once we hire someone. Don't know that we could hire someone half-time, but we could maybe start hiring interns to do smaller projects. Again, that's the board's decision. That's all I can say about that.
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, actually, John, what does a planner do?
Well, it depends on the planner. This particular position was Susan Monte's position. She did the special projects planning. We haven't had a special project since Susan left. I don't know what the next special project would be. The other thing Susan did was the recycling programs. I've been doing those since Susan left. It's been cutting into other things that I was doing before Susan left. But when she left, I started doing it, and it's just become second nature now. But she was the special projects planner, doing things like the last project with John Dwyer on, I can't even remember the name of it now, but for, it's been 3 years since it was done, but things like planning for tornadoes, planning for heat waves and things like that. John Dwyer has been doing that. Susan would help him with that. She did the update on the solid waste management plan. That doesn't need done for a while. She would do major zoning text amendments. We've been staffing those on our own. We've got a couple of those out right now. So those are the kinds of things that the special projects planner would do. If we do an update to the land resource management plan, the special projects planner would be doing that. It's been 15 years since we did the land resource management plan. Eventually that will need redone, but I don't view it as urgent. That's up to the board.
Ms. Furtado.
Anybody who worked with Susan Monte, anybody who was on ELEC when she was here, would absolutely tell you she was one of the most important people, and that role was vital to our county. The idea that we would just get rid of that position on a long-term scale and not have a planner is, I mean, I think it would make more sense to just take it from the general fund. It's $39,000, $40,000. Is it great? It's recurring. No, if we could get out of this meeting with $40K from the general fund, I'd take it. And I think that makes a lot more sense than getting rid of our long-term land plan management for this county. We are understaffed in terms of planning. When you look at other agencies of our size, I feel like that's a cut off your nose to spite your face kind of situation.
Mr. Sillard.
I'll have good news. These two positions is 29,000, so it's only 30 we're talking about. When I was in Julia's office, I worked with Susan on the hazardous waste recycling projects that she put on at Parkland College. That is a huge county project to put together that brings together a lot of different governmental agencies and vendors. I agree, 30,000 for these even recurring is not a big deal. It's not worth slashing an important position like this. So I would support using the general fund.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we take these as a general fund hit and fund the requests as they came to us. Travis, yeah.
One last thing that's not listed up here, a little bit of good news. The public defender had a budget request for expert witnesses in 26, and she has got a grant to cover those. So hooray.
Okay, that is the end of the list. Before you have something before we move on to cuts.
Yes. Miss McGrath is here and she would like to speak to the board. So I don't know how you planned on addressing the department heads who came, but I believe she would like to speak to the board about, I don't know, but she just wants to speak, so.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for teaching me how to use this device, which I messed up the last time. There are two positions for me that are not on the list that is before you this evening, and I'm sure that was an oversight. But when I had my budget conversations with Michelle and Travis, what we agreed that I would commit to if I were awarded those two positions would be that I would not ask for money from the general corporate fund, that I would find the money in my budget to be able to add those positions, which I think are necessary in order for us to meet the onerous burden that the state is about to lay on us, as I talked about in my budget presentation, to go back and start amnesty, automatic amnesty petitions, automatic expungement petitions, going back to 1970. I cannot do that work with the staff I have right now. Unfortunately, as somebody else said earlier in the evening, the state proposes, the county disposes, and they are pushing those costs back to us. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It happened when I was on the board. It's going to keep happening now. But I made that commitment, which I think is realistic for two reasons. One is, as Dustin said, unfortunately, I never have a full staff. I end up having to use overtime monies periodically to pay for that. But I never have a full staff because I'm paying people $19 an hour to work in these really important positions. And it is hard to fill them with what we are asking people to do. We have reduced the amount of overtime, the number of vacancies as much as possible, but I'm just never fully staffed. My good people, when they're trained, get poached by other offices because they're good people, so I feel good about that part. But I'm helping other county offices and other offices outside the county and not mine. So I think between my vacancies, which occur periodically, with retirements that are starting to occur periodically, with my ability, I would hope, to be able to at least cut the overtime expenses that I went bigger on this year in order to cover the work we have to do. I'm hoping that the board would consider this because I'm not asking for extra funds. I'm just asking for the two positions. So I appreciate you considering that.
Furtado, Carter. I saw another hand.
So the difference between this proposal and what I heard from the sheriff was that he was specifically going to cut an overtime line in order to fund this. That is a very different conversation than saying I underspend my budget and I want more positions. So,
Right.
and we have to pass a budget that funds the positions. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
And so what you're talking about is a dramatic change to how we budget positions. Because if we do that for you, the next thing will be the state's attorney comes to me and says, hey, I often don't have enough state's attorneys for the whole time. So if I had one more line, do you see what I'm saying? So like I would need to see the specific place from your budget that you are moving money from one line to another in order to accommodate that. Do you see the difference? The Pandora's box that you're trying to open up here is something that worries me greatly. So if there is a specific, I am saying from this line to this line, and I could fund those two people. But if you're just saying, you know, I've got empty positions and I think it'll work out, those are two really, really different things.
And I do understand. And in fact, I had asked for the money for those two positions. But when I went in for my conversation with the executive, that was one of the things we discussed is could we look outside the box of just asking for money and do something that would not cost the county money? That is something I've tried to do the entire time I've been in this position. I've not asked for extra positions. I've cut them. But one thing that is parallel to what Dustin said is my union contract does require that I have minimum staffing in certain positions. I'm not trying to do something deceptive. I'm not trying to do the Pandora's box, Ms. Furtado, that you suggested. I'm just working with what the executive suggested that I do in order to not cost the county further funds. Unfortunately, this was not something that apparently came to people's attention in the list of the staffing positions that were requested. So what didn't happen after the September 9th cow was that nobody approached me to ask me about the requests I had made. So I did not have the opportunity to work those out, which I was hoping would happen after cow, because it seemed like that's what everybody wanted to do, was to work together to try to come to a solution that would help us with the positions that we would need. So that's why I'm bringing it to you now, because that didn't happen and it's not on the list. That's why I'm asking you about it today.
Ms. Carter, could you give me the amount for the two salaries?
I don't have, hold on a second, because I brought that.
$104,000,
104.
unless there's some other position that I'm not aware of.
We're talking about the legal clerk, I believe, right?
Okay, thank you.
Or 105.
No. In the proposal that I made in the new position request, two positions, wages, benefits, and everything else included was $52,461. That's, yes, $52,461 for two people.
That's for one person.
I'm sorry. Oh, good Lord. You're right. I can't read. I'm sorry.
The pay isn't that
That was for each person, including the benefits. I'm looking at the wages. I'm so sorry. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Wages and benefits. Thank you for asking, Ms. Carter.
Chair Locke.
I know you don't have numbers directly in front of you, but you've been doing this position for a while and you're usually so meticulous in the information you provide us. So I know you're going to have at least the ability to give us a very educated guess about how much of your allocated payroll gets returned at the end of the year. How much falls down to the general fund because you've not spent it?
There are two kinds of monies that are coming back to the general fund. One is the agreement that we worked out on fees. Unfortunately, that amount has decreased because the fees have decreased, and we talked about that during budget hearing. The second amount, honestly, I don't have a good number for that without looking, and I don't think that Travis is prepared for that either because we really haven't talked about that, but there is additional money each year.
Michelle.
Last year in payroll returned by the circuit clerk, it was $400,000.
So I know that this is very outside of how. the
Oh, wait,
county-
I'm sorry. That's not right.
That's
Hold on.
not right.
Let me look
Okay.
again.
All right. So while Michelle's looking for the accurate number, thank you for letting us know. I know this is very outside the way we normally do it, and tough times, right? Tough times call for it. We know that the circuit clerk's office is chronically understaffed, and we know that when we budget for full staffing, that money, there's always going to be something coming back. That's why I want to find out how much we're sending back.
Sorry, that was one thing Michelle and I had discussed in our budget conversation was the fact that there was room within the budget because of these various things that happened to my folks that allow for this to be in the budget.
Susan, let's say that the unthinkable happened and you're fully staffed and the budget's, the number's what it is. If you have a probationary employee, do you have the guts and would you come to us for more money, or would you say, you know what, we've never needed this many?
When the person is off of probation, their salary doesn't increase. So that's just not the way we operate. And again, I had made a commitment to the county in prior budget years that I would not increase salaries at the end of each year. I wouldn't do it. And so for legal clerk to go to the next position, which is senior legal clerk, that's about an 18-month wait before I can make that promotion because of what I promised that I would do. And I keep my promises.
Ms. Bordato.
So looking at your budget, I did some math on the different increases in personnel, and I understand that you're underspending, but in terms of budgeted increases, yours is on the high end. Your budget increase from 2024 actual to 2026 is 13.9%. To give you a sense of it, the Inman's budget increase in that amount of time was 8.5%. The coroner's budget increase in that amount of time was 9.7%. So your budgeted amount is.
And here's what happened. Remember that I went through the JEC to get a grade increase for 3 of my 4 positions, which went through JEC and then was approved by the board. So part of the increase in the budget was the process that I went through as designed by the board in the salary ordinance to increase the salaries to where they are now.
Yeah, so I just, maybe there's something going on with the budgeting in this office that isn't adding up well. But yeah, I mean, if you're returning $400,000 a year, what this says is like, we're just not, in a fundamental way, we're just not budgeting this division correctly.
And as all of us have said tonight, all of us are working with the executive and with Travis to make sure that our budgets are as accurate as they can be. It's been a source of pride to me that I can return some money to the county, but part of it is just because of how things go with personnel. So this year, for example, I had 2 people retire. That was actually an extra hit that I had not anticipated immediately because one of them retired unexpectedly. And so we had some larger payouts for those 2 folks who retired. But I was able to absorb that because the vacancies were such that I could take care of those folks and make sure they got paid out. part of it really is hard to budget for because I don't know how many people are going to be there at any given time. I don't know how much overtime there will be, but I haven't used my temp money. That, for example, is a source of money that I don't need. I don't think I've used all my contractual line item. That might be another source of money as well. I don't know those numbers because I don't have them in front of me this evening. But as I said before, I'm always willing to work on numbers that will help the county. I think we all are.
Mr. Pugh.
Thank you. I just make a quick thing. I have to take off here in a minute. I'm okay with whatever Susan wants to do. She's never steered us wrong, so I'm with that.
Mr. Farney.
According to the report 12/31/24, the circuit clerk's general fund returned in salary and fringes $60,179.
I mean, that's.
So, okay. It definitely sounds like this is an issue that we need to look into and address in the future budget cycle. Right now, we don't have a specific proposal. I think if we want to be consistent here, you know, if there's a way to truly keep the budget flat, yeah, Travis, do you want to add something? Then I think we can consider that.
I would propose maybe we do what I'm gonna work with the coroner on, see if the contractual services that Susan mentioned, temporary staff, if we can find line items to transfer into full-time staff that zero it out, similar to the coroner. If I can get okay for that, I'll work with Susan.
Yes, that's where I was going.
And of course, as you've heard from other folks tonight, if it turns out that adding the 2 positions is not feasible, that's what I thought I needed. But if we can't do it, then we can't do it. And if it turns out we can only do 1, then we can only do 1. I would like to at least have the 1 because I can see what's coming down the pike, thanks to our state legislature. But anything that we can do to work together is always what I want to do.
Mr. Sellard.
I was just going to say that I like that proposal and I would endorse that as a direction to finance to work with Ms. McGrath on this, similar to working with Cora.
Okay. Thank you for sticking with us this long.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it.
Okay. I think that actually wraps up that portion. I'm going to move on to proposed cuts. I've only received one specific proposal, and I think Mr. Farney wants to speak to that.
Yeah, looking for specific cuts. I'd like to direct Travis to move the following budget lines from the auditor's office to the administrative finance department. Charges for services, fees, fines, and charges, 100%. Personnel, regular, full-time, and temporary staff, 100%. And then adjust the commodities and services to be reduced based on 1 elected official.
Any discussion? Ms. Rodriguez?
I agree.
I also fully support this proposal. This will fund the positions that we've added to take on the accounts payable duties. Mr. Sellard.
I was just going to ask if you could repeat that. I was turning to the page and didn't get it.
Sure. We're going to move the charges for services, fees, fines, and charges, 100% of that line. Personnel, regular, full-time, and temporary staff, 100% of those lines. And commodities and services to be adjusted, reduced based on 1 elected official.
Any further discussion? Okay, Travis, did you get that? Okay. Unless there are any other specific proposed cuts. Going once, going twice. All of our elected officials can leave. That concludes the detailed portion of this meeting. We definitely want to think about how we're going to move forward. I think going back to Mr. Sellard's several hours ago suggestion that we do need to make some pretty significant changes moving forward. Otherwise, we're going to be in a really bad position with the growing deficit. So those will be continued conversations. And I guess I will turn it back to Chair Locke.